Hidden Gems, Episode 65, Designer Spotlight on Kramer and Kiesling. Welcome to Hidden Gems, a board game podcast where we review unusual, forgotten, and underappreciated board games. We're your hosts. My name is Chris.
I'm Jason.
And this is Bill.
Thanks for listening to our show.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It has been.
It has been. We're so sorry.
It was a bit of a perfect storm where everybody lined up their vacations like in a line kind of thing.
We're such bad hosts. We try, though. We really do. I promise you we try. But as Bill said, we've been traveling like crazy, as we often do in the summertime. And literally none of us were all here at the same time, it seemed like, for the last 5 weeks.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's summer.
Yeah, exactly.
So where's everybody been? I don't even know if I know.
Forgotten. It's
'Cause you've been
so
gone.
long.
I know, right?
That's true.
Where were you, Bill? Was it your annual beach trip? I'm trying to remember.
No, that's in September this year.
Okay.
And we're going to Emerald Island.
Yeah.
Emerald Isle, and the house, by the way, is just off the charts. I mean, we rented it last year before it was built, and we just saw pictures of it outfitted.
Oh, you're going to a new place.
Going to a new place.
Okay.
And it's got 10 rooms, because now, like, the kids that are the grandkids, I guess, and the family are starting to have babies, so you can't really put them on the couches anymore, and they kind of need their own rooms,
Right.
sort of thing. But this one, I guess we got a good price on it because they didn't have any renters yet. But it's got like a theater room in it. It's got a pool table and an ice hockey table and like a poker table, game table kind of thing that's there in the middle. I mean, it's
Nice.
It's gorgeous. Anyway, can't wait to go there. But I'll tell you about that in September. My trip this time, and I'm thinking I had more than one, but the one that was probably most significant is we went to Chicago for a 4 or 5 day weekend to help my wife's cousin move out of a Chicago suburb that's like right there in Lake Michigan.
Oh, nice.
And they're kind of in their retirement age, and I've lived there for 20-some years. It was very interesting for me at my stage in life to look at somebody else going through the emotional spaces, I guess, of looking at the stuff that they've had for a long time and getting rid of it.
Yeah,
and
right.
Moving down to smaller square footage, having kids that don't want some really cool stuff, right? And
Right.
They got to get rid of it. So, I mean, it was good to do a favor for them, and it was good for me to see the process of that going on. So,
My wife has told me numerous times. She was like, at what age and when are you going to start getting rid of all your stuff?
right.
Talking about my board games and my comics and my graphic novels, and I was like, never.
Yeah, which one of your kids is going to inherit this entire room
She
of
was like,
cardboard?
you're going to burden your kids with all that stuff out there. And I was like, I don't even want to think about that right now. We'll get there when we get there,
Well, that's funny because, like, when I was in my 40s, I used to travel a lot internationally, and I would pick up a beer stein in, like, every country I went to. Because I started in Germany and, like, was there for Oktoberfest, and so I got, like, 10 there, right? All the liter, beer steins. And my wife decided that I had too many when around 40, and it's like, we need to get rid of some of these. And so I was gonna, put them in a birthday pile that I was gonna give them to, like, my nieces and nephews, and somehow that got confused and went to the donation spot, and I am still super salty about that.
Got confused in air quotes.
Exactly. So, Chris, don't let that happen.
Oh, yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, there was like 3/4 of my collection. It was like,
Oh, my gosh.
It's gone.
We got confused and had a really big bonfire one night.
Exactly.
What is that Christmas movie? A Christmas Story where the leg lamp accidentally gets broken?
Oh, yeah. Oh, darn.
Oh, man.
That was a work of art, man. Yeah. So, is there anything else I can tell you about Chicago?
What's your favorite pizza in Chicago? Go.
Ooh. Oh, gosh, I can't remember the place, but I do remember the day. Somebody,
Giordano's?
is it Inzagati's? Something.
Oh, Lou Malnati's?
Luminati's.
That's my favorite.
That's Luminati's, yes.
Lou Malnati's is the best.
So we went probably 10 years ago. The kids were pretty young. It was a super hot day in Chicago. I mean, it was like over 100. and we were trying to find it, and it was the early days of GPSs. I think I had a Garmin back then, like way back then, in my hand, and Kathy's sister had it on her phone. But the way the tall buildings are, you can't see the satellites or whatever. She wasn't getting good reception. I wasn't getting good reception, and the roads in downtown Chicago are circular, right? So you can be. If you don't know which one of those roads you're on, it's easy to get confused.
You're literally running in circles.
We're literally running in circles, and we probably walked, 5 miles trying to find that, and we're just sweating our asses off. And I've never been in a place where the beer tasted better nor the pizza, so it was really good.
Nice.
I've never heard of this place.
Oh, dude, it's
So,
great.
My wife's family, part of them are from Chicago, and so she grew up doing Giordano's all the time.
Yeah.
And her mom will order the packed-in dry ice pizzas from there and bring them down for New Year's.
It's funny
And whatnot. So,
have either one of you? I mean, this is kind of the hotness right now. The Bear. Either one of you watched The Bear? It's in Chicago.
Yeah, so I tried and I stopped watching it.
Yeah.
I just didn't enjoy it. It's too much screaming.
Right.
I feel like they're just constantly yelling at each other all episode, every
that's
episode.
the point.
Right.
Heard, Chef.
It is stressful to watch.
Yeah, we watched the first season. The second season, we kind of lost the thread a little bit, but I've heard the third one is really good, so we need to get back to it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it after it was all over, but there was some of it was like, really, do you really need to be this angsty about everything
I know.
all the time? Because it's like, it is a little over the top.
And I don't mind that to a point, but it got to the point to where I was like, this show is nothing but them just yelling at each other the whole time. So I just lost interest. But that's me. I know it's popular.
Yeah. Anyway, that's it. How about you, Jason? We'll save Chris for last. Since he's-
Okay.
Yeah, where have we been? A lot of small stuff. So we took like a random belated Father's Day trip to Asheville.
Hometown.
Hung out in Hendersonville,
Yep.
south of Asheville.
It's a big retirement community.
That's right. That's where I went mountain biking a couple months
It's also right next to Pisgah National Forest, which is amazing.
Oh,
And
gosh.
so, yeah, we did some hiking and floated down the I almost said the Noose, but that's in Raleigh. Floated down the French Broad River for a while.
Yeah.
I got fried in the sun for like 4 hours.
Sierra Nevada Brewery. Did you hit that?
I have been there. We didn't go on this trip
Oh, okay.
with the kids,
Yeah.
but that was a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
then we were at the beach for 4th of July weekend.
Which beach were you at?
Went to Fort Caswell, which I have not been to before, but it's like a big Christian camp conference center thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we had a connection there, and so stayed for relatively cheap for the weekend. But yeah, that was fun. 4th of July. And then my sister was in town with her 2 high school age kids. They are in Pennsylvania normally and haven't been down to visit in a while, especially since we moved. And so it was good to see them. Hung out on the lake for a little bit. Yeah.
Awesome.
Nice.
So like no big, hurrah, but just little stuff here and there. Weekend stuff, which always dents our gaming nights since we play on
Right.
Sundays a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
It's good to catch up with family, though.
Oh, yeah,
Totally.
for sure.
For me, I went to 3 different places over the span of about 5 weeks, which again is why we haven't recorded. So apologies. It's mostly my fault.
It is Chris's.
I should have
all
just
Chris's
removed myself from this episode. But one week I was in Wilmington, North Carolina doing a locums job. Did some traveling doctor MD work at a group down there. Spent some time in Wilmington, Wrightsville Beach, which was good. I enjoyed that. Left directly from there, went to Orlando, Florida for Bryce's video game competition / going to Universal Studios yet again and almost blacking out on rides again. I told my family, it was kind of bittersweet because this might be the last time I do an amusement park. Because I think we're just done. You know what I mean? Unless I go with my kids when they have kids. Yeah, that would be it.
Yeah.
Getting close to where I can issue your walker now. Welcome to the Old People Club.
You know, it's funny. I just don't enjoy them as much as I used to.
Yeah, Sonny.
I know. I feel like such an old fart saying that, but I just don't enjoy it. I was worn out by the end of the day, and I can't ride half the stuff anymore because it makes me dizzy and sick. So did that, came back, and then Tally and I went to take a pretty interesting trip in that we just went to an area of the country that we have just never been to. I know, Jason, you've been there. We went to the Eastern Shore, east of the Chesapeake Bay, and I spent some time in a place called St. Michael's, Maryland.
The gun handle part of Maryland.
The gun handle part of Maryland. And then we went to the super exciting state of Delaware,
Oh, boy.
which I'm going to say, I think Delaware gets kind of a bad rap.
I mean, it's not a terrible place.
No, I really enjoyed it. I think if you're like in your 20s and you're looking to like just cut loose. You're going to be bored in Delaware. But for me, Italia was perfect.
Mm-hmm.
It was really nice. A lot of farmland. The beaches were nice, except for Rehoboth Beach. My gosh. It was a madhouse. There were so many people. Oh, my goodness. I couldn't believe it.
We used to go there as a family occasionally. We kind of were split between several different beaches, but we would go there sometimes. And it was crazy even back in high school days.
It's like Joe Biden's beach.
Is it a white sandy beach? I mean, is it like a North Carolina beach?
It looks like a North Carolina beach.
Does it? Okay.
I wouldn't consider it like sugar sand, blue water. It looks like the Atlantic, you know?
Right.
Water was freezing.
Mm-hmm.
In Wilmington, it felt like bath water. When I got into Delaware, I was like, It was cold.
Right. Getting the eddies back from the Arctic, I guess.
Probably so.
Well, cool.
Yeah.
Well, what else do you guys got going on outside of the travels?
Ooh,
I know I have
got some
something I'm
things.
excited to share about, but
All right, you should go. I was just talking.
all right. Well, so I've been playing a game, and I shared this with Chris already a little
Oh,
bit, but
shoot,
I am
yeah.
super excited to talk about this.
Awesome.
So this was probably the best game that I've played in like 4 or 5 years.
Woo!
I don't say that lightly. Like, it's probably the best game I've played since Hades, and I think this game is better than Hades.
Oh,
honestly.
my gosh. Okay.
So this game's called Nine Souls, SOLS, no U, and it is awesome. It's Metroidvania, so similar to like Hollow Knight, those types of games, but it's just so well done. Normally, I feel like we're always talking about Switch games on the show, and I think this is destined for Switch at some point.
It is for sure. I've
I had-
researched it.
Yeah, I had heard really good things about it, and was like browsing around on Steam, which I do every once in a while. And there was like a big sale going on, and it was on sale.
Summer sale. You should
I
have
was
told
like,
me.
this just came out and it was on sale, so I was like, I'm gonna jump on it.
Release sell.
Yeah.
A lot of games do that.
Yeah. So this game, like I said, is Metroidvania. You play as Yi, who is like this small fox, cat, mouse, I don't know, creature with a yellow cape. But dude, he's a badass. So the theme is like, they call it Tao Punk. So Tao Punk. It's like Asian themed, but it's like techno Asian styling. So Yi is one of 10 souls, which is like the Solarians or like this other race or whatever. But they're responsible for managing / bringing about a new utopian society of a sort. But Yi is bent on revenge against the other 9 souls who've done him dirty in a really big way. Which
So they're people. The Nine Souls are
they're
like
creatures.
enemies.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And you don't fully know why he is against them. I still haven't figured it out. I'm on the 5th of 9 souls. But, dude, it's awesome. So I don't know exactly what's happened yet, but you're fighting each of the souls and finding them and fighting them. But it's interesting because you're finding out along the way how each of them went from, like, their noble intentions to, like, becoming more and more corrupt.
Right.
Losing their way. I mean, it's pretty dark in some of them. I mean, it's cartoony, and it's more comic book than it is cartoon. Like the styling, each time you come up against a boss, it goes into like comic book story panel mode. It tells the story in comic book fashion. Like the fonts and stuff are all the comic book fonts and all this stuff.
So cool.
So just the way the story is told and the theming and all that stuff is just a really good execution of a Metroidvania. But I think the best thing to talk about is the combat. Like, hands down, the combat is just phenomenal. So the way it works is that it's a parry mechanic, which means basically it's a lot about blocking, which generally in games like this, I'm like, forget the blocking, forget the shield, who cares, just whack things.
Parrying is usually a liability in games.
Yeah.
It's usually not worth it.
Right. In this game, if you don't learn how to parry correctly, you will die every time. Like the easiest enemy is like the first Goomba in Mario. Like if you don't know how to parry, you are going to die. But what's cool about it is that when you parry, if you parry perfectly, you gain abilities. But if you parry imperfectly, you don't take damage, but you take internal damage. So your health bar goes down, but it turns red. And so if you stay that way for a long time, it'll slowly creep back up to where it was. But obviously, if you take, like, you can take internal damage all the way down to 0 and just keep taking hits as long as you're parrying. But if you were to get actually hit at that point, you'd just be instant dead.
Okay.
And then on top of that, you have these things called talismans, where if you get enough good, like perfect parries, you gain talismans, which you can like throw at an enemy, and it just like blows their head off, and it's so cool. It just feels super satisfying. I read something about this game. They spent like 2.5 years or something just perfecting the combat mechanics of it before they even started building the rest of the game. And it's awesome. Caveats would be that it's freaking hard. This is one of the hardest games I've ever played. Yeah. But dude, it just feels so good when you actually beat the bosses. And I will say the bosses are crazy hard, but these are some of the coolest bosses I've fought. And it's the first game I've ever played that has made me enjoy boss fights.
Really?
Like most games that I play, including Hollow Knight, I hate bosses. I don't want to fight them, which is usually why I get to the very end of the game and I get to the final boss and I'm like, all right, screw it, I beat the game. Because I don't like...
That's crazy.
Because I don't like boss fights. They usually just feel unfair, and I don't like trying to figure out the patterns and having to do it.
The memorization, yeah.
Right.
Hollow Knight was the first game that I actually put in the work to make it through most of the boss fights. But this one, man, they're just so fun. I'm currently stuck on the 5th one, and it's hard, but they're all hard. So,
And that's why you're using your PS5 controller on your laptop.
yes, because it would be impossible to play otherwise.
Okay.
Yeah, there's just so many button combinations you need because you're dashing and you're spinning and bouncing off stuff and like charging things and throwing talismans and doing all this stuff. And so there's just a lot going on in the combat, but it becomes kind of second nature after a little while. But
Yeah.
it's super fun. So
Yeah.
highly recommended.
I just pulled it up on my phone, and it does look pretty cool. I mean, it's kind of a side scroller.
It looks a lot like Hollow Knight.
It borrows a lot from Hollow Knight. I would say there's not really anything super revolutionary about it, other than the fact that it's just a very, very good execution of a Metroidvania.
I played a game recently in Metroidvania called Islets, which was phenomenal.
I've heard of that.
And
it's
it
kind of
didn't-
like lighter themed, right?
Yeah, it didn't do anything new, but it just did things that have already been done so well. I still really enjoyed it. I don't think you need to be original necessarily if you just do what you're trying to do really well, which I thought it did too.
Yeah. I'm not going to draw any early conclusions, but
Don't you dare.
this game could be better than Hollow Knight, to be honest. Like, it's a
crazy
hard
talk.
comparison because playing Hollow Knight, it was like the first time I had played a game that like a Metroidvania like that was that epic and that well done, and so it's hard. It's a hard comparison, 10 years apart or whatever. But
it's not
it's really well done.
You don't have to find a path like you do with Hollow Knight, right? This is all linear, I'm assuming.
It's not linear. It is more linear than Hollow Knight, I would say. But there is backtracking and doors you won't be able to get through and stuff you have to figure out. But
Big map.
it's not like you could just. I don't know. I've read certain things where people are like, well, I beat this boss first, and then I went to that boss. And I'm like, I don't know how you would do that because of the way that the abilities progression. I don't know how you could do it, but maybe it's possible. It feels linear to me, at least in terms of which bosses you fight. But I mean, even Hollow Knight was that way.
Hollow Knight's
Like,
that way.
You can't just go to the depths of whatever that place is called
Right.
out of the gate. So anyway, I've talked long enough about this game, but you need to play it. It's
Yeah.
good.
Cool.
Check it out.
I definitely will.
Me. Don't really have any games to talk about. I've been trying to play around with learning how to use ChatGPT for coding and Python stuff and stuff like that. And so I was looking for an application to just play with. And so I looked at querying the BGG database, which I know 1,000 people have already skinned that cat. And there's lots of things that are out there.
Have you connected to the actual database? Mm-hmm. Really?
Yeah.
I think I tried to do that when I was doing the mining stuff, and I ended up just writing a screen scraper to pull the data off the front end. But I guess there's ways. Did you have to like apply for API keys and stuff to get to it?
No, there's like a Board Game Geek set of API libraries that I ended up
interesting.
accessing and included.
Well, either that's new or I'm just an idiot and I missed it.
No, well, there's a trick to it for sure because you can straight up kind of screen scrape 3 or 4 items off the main page, but if you want something like the designers and the publishers and
Yeah, that would be a pain.
which is what I did. So I got the designers, the publishers, the weight, how many people voted, and like a description, I guess, of it. It's like 5 or 6 things. It's kind of difficult to getting it to just stream it because it kept stopping after 100 because of the way it does paging or something like that. There's some weird things that I think got broken. It was probably working at one point, but the Python 3 release has a different way that it does parsing of pages. And so,
Chris, you know all about that, right?
Oh yeah,
exactly.
I totally am
Chris
tracking
jumped in.
with the way-
Chris
yeah.
told me, he said, "Hey,
yeah,
are
so
you
you-
using Python 3?"
Yeah.
But anyway, it's kind of cool because now I can take the first 1,000 games and you can put in something like Kinesia and you see all the games that he has in the top 1,000 or whatever and see the ratings, and then you can ask crazy questions like who has the highest rating games in the top 1,000 between Feldman and Kinesia and whatever Wallace.
Right.
or other games, or if you're has engine in it too. So if you put like who has the most card playing, or how many card playing games does each of them have in a top 1,000 or whatever. So it doesn't really have great application other than if you're nerdy and just kind of look at that stuff. But
I thought it was cool when you showed it to me.
Oh, so you wired it into ChatGPT?
Well, I coded it partially from ChatGPT, partially from having to debug it myself because ChatGPT wouldn't do some things, and then now it's a separately running program with a GUI interface that you just put in the values that you want, and then it gives you a XLS kind of spreadsheet.
But it's not going from like ChatGPT style prompts.
Oh no.
Okay.
No. It just has like 5 or 6 entry
that's
fields. Yeah. No. It
trained ChatGPT on
No,
BGG.
I use ChatGPT to mostly write the code for me. So
Gotcha. Cool.
So
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was fun.
I know how to use Excel spreadsheets.
Cool. Well, the output would go into Excel spreadsheets, so you could do whatever you wanted with it.
Somewhat. Yeah, I have no idea what y'all were talking about. It sounds cool.
It's nerdy.
I love it. All right. Well, I have a game to talk about. I've played this one for a while, but I just haven't had a chance to talk about it. I thought now was a good time just because, unlike what we were just talking about how games, don't have to necessarily be original if they're done well. This one is still done well, but it's unique, which is one of the reasons I want to talk about it. It's called Super Mega Zero. Have you heard of this one?
Nope.
I have not.
Okay, so Jason, you might actually be intrigued by this. So this game is very similar to a game we've talked about on the podcast before called Celeste.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so if you know about Celeste, it's one of these platformer games where you're going to die like a bajillion times. Another example would be like Super Meat Boy or Slime Sand, any games like that where you're just going to die over and over and over again. And mercifully, much like in Celeste, when you die in this game, you respawn just immediately because it just knows you're going to die. There's no downtime. It's just you die and you're back right away, right, to try the level again. So the idea behind the game is you're Super Mega Zero. So you are literally the number 0. You are a 0 with legs, okay? And at the start of the game, your girlfriend, who is also a 0 with legs and has like a little bow in her head, gets grabbed by the kill screen. So if you know what a kill screen is, you know what that is, Bill?
I know the blue screen of death. I don't know what the kill screen is.
So a kill screen is, there's this thing that happens in old arcade style games, like Pac-Man,
right,
or Donkey Kong would be another one, where if you get so far in the game just crashes. And in Pac-Man, actually, in the kill screen, the game actually scrambles. Like it looks scrambled.
Yeah.
And so that's what this looks like. The scrambly kill screen grabs and takes your girlfriend. Okay.
Like all hex codes showing up on the screen.
Right. And so you have to get her back. Okay. So the way it works is like I said, you're the number 0. And that matters because in the levels, you will run across other numbers, like a 3 or a 4. And when you do that, you become the number 4. And the reason that matters is that tells you how many dashes and jumps you have.
Okay.
So when you are a 4 and you jump, you turn into a 3. And then if you dash, you become a 2. And the game is tasking you to get where you need to get in the number of dashes or jumps that it's giving you, right? Before you pick up more. You can run over another number and you can proceed on, okay? So it's that kind of game. But it kind of plays with this mathematical theme in a really fun way. So if you run over an infinity sign, you can jump an infinite number of times, and so it kind of becomes like a Flappy Bird type of level where you're just kind of flapping around. If you run over pluses or minuses, it inverts the polarity of the room, and you'll like go on the ceiling, and you'll go back down to the floor when you run over pluses and minuses. Is that a frog out there?
Yeah, dude, we have so many of them in our pond in like the backyard, and they're just so loud all the time. Oh my gosh,
it's driving me crazy. Bill, will you go out there and like scream or something?
just go catch the frog, Bill.
All right, I'll be back at the end of the episode.
Okay.
Don't come back without a frog.
I'm being serious. Can you go like yell at it or something?
I don't think that's gonna work, but okay. I don't think frogs respond to yells.
Get it, Bill.
Yeah, dude, we have like 5 or 6 of them in the little pond in the back, and it's like deafeningly loud.
Oh, yeah.
On summer nights like this.
They just let it rip, man. They're like, hey, that worked.
They'll be right back.
It probably will be. All right, we tried.
Yeah, give it 30 seconds. He'll be back.
If you hear some chirping,
He's got loving to do.
we're sorry. That's right. It's calling for a mate. All right, so where was I? Oh yeah, another one you can so you run over a sign, SIN, like a sine wave.
Oh,
And
nice.
you move in like a wave form. It does all these really neat things with like these math symbols.
There he is.
That's terrible. Okay. And then every like 7 or 8 levels, this is one of the coolest things about the game, and I think why I like it as much as I do, is you enter a ship and it turns into a shooter, like a shoot 'em up.
Huh.
Yeah. So you're like flying around in a ship and you're shooting the kill screen, basically. And then when you complete that level, it goes back to platforming again. And then every 7 or 8 levels, you'll do shoot 'em up again. And then the last thing I have to mention, you know in Celeste how they have the strawberries, Jason? Mm-hmm. So the strawberries in Celeste are kind of like, you don't have to do it, but it's just like an added challenge, right? It's
If
like
you want to like say you actually beat the game,
exactly.
you gotta go for it.
It's a badge of honor, right? Well, in this game, they have pie coins, pie coins. That are in really hard to reach places. You do not need to get them, but if you get them, you feel awesome. But what it does is if you get all the pie coins, it unlocks the pie level at the end of the game, which is just like complete
It's like the B-sides. in
carnage.
Celeste.
Yeah, it's brutal. So I beat the game, got all the pie coins, cleared every level. I have not cleared the pie world. It is so hard. Any like fractional mistake is just punished with instant death. You have to be absolutely perfect to clear these levels.
I like that stuff to a point,
Yeah.
but
I haven't gone back to it in a while because it did get a little defeating. It's hard.
You are such an overachiever. I can't imagine doing that. That's crazy.
But it's fun getting there, and it's doable. It's a hard game, no doubt. But you don't need to do the pie coins. It's clearable. But yeah, to 100% it, really hard. Really hard.
games about math.
You should try it, Jason.
It does sound kind of cool.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Nice.
Did we talk about a cocktail?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Want to?
Mine's gone.
Yeah,
already.
mine's gone too. I did a good job and got them done early this episode. So the cocktail tonight is nothing particularly special. It's a Moscow Mule, which I'm sure most people, if you're a cocktail drinker, have probably had that. But the reason that I am talking about it is on our travels to the Eastern Shore, when we were in Maryland, we went into where did we go? We went to a distillery, actually. And they were selling a ginger beer concentrate that I had never seen before, called Pickett's. Have y'all heard of this?
No.
So it's Pickett's Hot and Spicy. So it's a really strong.
I have heard of like extra hot and spicy ginger
Yeah.
beer stuff. I don't know if I've heard of that brand before.
Yeah,
It is. It is very spicy.
it is. And I actually held
Oh,
back
it's
a
good.
little bit. So one of the nice things about this stuff is you can control it, right? So it's a concentrate. So you pour it in your glass and you dilute it with your club soda. And you can make it as strong or as weak as you want, right? And for me, for a mule, it's so disappointing to order a mule at a restaurant and to be like weak. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I like it to just blow my hair back. You know what I mean? Like strong. And with this Pickett stuff, you can make it really spicy, which is one of the reasons I really like it.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
I'm down to the bottom and it's getting spicier.
Yeah, Pickett's Hot and Spicy. So if you don't know what a mule is, it's 2 ounces of vodka, half an ounce of lime juice, and 4 ounces of ginger beer. You stir that, put it in a copper cup as a requirement
Right.
with ice and a lime wedge.
That's good.
Yes.
Well done.
Thank you, sir. All right, well, that's about it for the banter. I will just quickly mention that after this episode is over, we're going to do Bill's favorite part of the podcast, and that's resuming our top 100.
Yeah.
Bill has had so much angst about this.
I do have
True
so
to
much
form, he texted again today complaining about it.
Oh, well, these guys have it so much easier than I do. So, yes.
Bill, I think, thinks that his choices aren't quote-unquote as good as ours, but I've enjoyed listening to yours, honestly. Just talking about like games you grew up with, and I think, hey, they're your favorite games, you know?
It's true. Well, I guess it's like I don't know. I'm always surprised at people who can commit to like a tattoo, because I can't commit to like a bumper sticker. So how could you like ever do that? So I'm making this list and I'm like, this looks good right now, and I've like re-reviewed it today, and it's like half the things on there. It's like,
You
what
just have
was
to
I
not
thinking?
look at it ever again.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I did. I'm the same. I don't have tattoos because I can't figure out what I would want.
Right.
But at the same time, I just made my list, and I'm just like, I'm done with it. I'm not going to tweak it anymore. It is what it is, and you get what you get.
I just feel like it's a statement. I want to make the right statement, though.
Well, how else is our listenership going to judge you, Bill?
Exactly.
Unless you do a top 100
That's right.
list, you know? Like, what is this guy thinking?
Yes, Chris has already got me so paranoid about being judged about everything already.
Axis and allies.
What? Are you 8?
Munchkin? Are you kidding me?
Marvel Munchkin.
Marvel Munchkin, that's right.
Not regular Munchkin. Marvel Munchkin.
Well, if you'd like to hear what all this Top 100 is about, it's something we do on our Backstage podcast. That is a Patreon-exclusive podcast. If you support us on Patreon for as little as $2 a month, you get access to our Backstage, which we talk about all kinds of crazy stuff on there. May or may not be board game related, but right now we're going through our Top 100 list. So if you want to join us on there and kind of hear what we enjoy, it helps us pay our bills, and we would appreciate that very much. It's a lot of fun to do.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's get into some games, dudes.
I agree. Let's do it.
Brave pirates, go forth. In the middle of the great ocean lie 8 islands, where One Eye has hidden the immeasurable treasures. Ducats, sabers, treasure chest, and of course, valuable jewels are there to plunder.
I don't know what I'm doing. That's not pirate, is it?
Oh, it's totally pirate.
Is it not? Okay.
And of course, valuable jewels are there to plunder. And all pirates want only one thing: to have the most. The players take what the others want and hinders each other while salvaging the treasures. And you'll need plenty of sabers to deal with One Eye, who keeps his beady eye on his treasure. Your aim is to gather the jewels, which you gain from the island cards, showing jewels or treasure chests. These cards can be bought or forcibly raided from One Eye. The winner is the player with the most jewels at the end of the game.
I feel like it took you longer to read that flavor text than it takes to play the game itself.
Yeah, it's so true. Oh, that was horrible.
All right, everybody can turn their car volume back up.
You know, I just had a thought. What does that sound like when you're playing on 2 times the speed as well? Because I'm sure everybody listens to this whole podcast. Like 1.5, 1.25.
Oh, man, too funny. Good job, Bill.
No, it's good.
It was great.
Thanks, Chris.
All right. Einauge Wachsam, published in 2009 by Amigo. At the time of this recording, its BGG ranking is 7,144. And obviously, because this is a spotlight on Kramer and Kiesling episode, the designers are Wolfgang, Kramer, and Michael Kiesling. All right, brief rule summary for Einauge Wachsam. Also, the English translation for that loosely or roughly, I believe, is keep an eye on them. Or keep an eye on it. I guess keep an eye on your treasure.
I translated it on Google Translate as One Eye, be alert.
Really?
Which kind of sounds like beware of One Eye, the pirate. But I don't know.
And on this list, it says
Hard to say.
One Eye, be on the lookout. So,
Okay.
So I'm sure there's...
All of those make sense
Yeah.
in the context
Yeah.
of the game. So, yeah, I can believe that. All right, so in Einauge, this is an engine building game where the players are pirates who are trying to steal One Eye's valuable gems, which are hidden on different colored islands throughout the Caribbean. The main component in the game is a deck of 56 island cards. These island cards come in 8 different colors, 7 islands per color. Outside of its color, each island card has 2 important pieces of information printed on it. Its cost in ducats, and then its reward, which you will require if you manage to obtain that card. The rewards come in 4 different varieties: gems, ducats, sabers, and treasure chests. So it's important to understand that with the island cards, all of the 2 value cards are the same. All of the 3 value cards are the same. All the 4 value cards look the same as far as what rewards they give you. And again, they'll have different varieties of rewards. So some might just give you gems, which are basically victory points, whereas some may give you a combination of coins, sabers, and treasure chests. For the treasure chest, just tuck that away in your memory bank. We'll come back to that, and we'll talk about that at the end. During the preparation phase of the game, the island deck is shuffled, and 6 island cards are then placed face up on the table. Next to this display is a separate board, which can also hold up to 6 different island cards, and this is known as One-Eye's Table. 1 random card will be placed on this table to start the game. On a player's turn, he must first take a single island card from the display, paying the cost in ducats, and then receiving the rewards. So when you take this card, you take it, you place it face up in front of you, you get whatever's printed on it. Now, at this point, I want to explain a very important rule in the game, and that's when you take additional islands in the future that match the color of an island that you have already taken. So let's say I take a red island that gives me 3 coins, and then on a future turn, I take another red island that gives me a gem. When I take that card, I stack it on top of my previously acquired red card, and I get all of the prior rewards. So I'd get the gem and the 3 coins again. If I get a third red card, I would get whatever that card gives me, and then I would get the gem and the 3 coins again. So to a certain extent, you're kind of behooved to try to collect the same color because you get a lot of rewards that kind of cascade on themselves, if that makes sense. Once a player has taken a card from the display, he then has the option of taking a single card off of One-Eye's table. In order to take a card from the table, the player must be able to spend 3 or 4 sabers, depending on the card, in order to acquire a card from the table. This card is then added to any previously acquired island cards with, again, chain reaction occurring as appropriate. So if I took a yellow card from his table and I had yellow cards, all those cards would fire again and give me their rewards. Following this, the player must then take an available card from the display and add it to One-Eye's table if there is room available. So it might happen if people aren't taking cards off One-Eye's table that it might fill up and there isn't any empty space. But if there is, you have to choose a card from the display and add it to his table, and the choice of what card you take and add to the table very much matters, and there's some things to think about there when you do that, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, in the review. Then lastly, the player will flip over new cards from the deck until there are again 6 cards face up in the display. Again, that's the cards next to One-Eye's table. Play will continue on in this way until a pirate ship card is revealed, which triggers the end of the game. So these are cards that are just on the bottom of the deck. Once those come out, those trigger the end of the game. The current round will go to completion, and then there is one additional final round where all of the players can take a single card off of One-Eye's table if they have the required sabers. Once all players have finished taking their turns, the game ends, and then the final scoring occurs. So I mentioned earlier, actually I don't think I mentioned this earlier. Let me go into a little detail here. I think this is what my note was referencing that I didn't go into. So the 4 things on the cards. The coins give you more coins to buy cards. The gems are victory points. This is one thing I didn't go into detail on. So anytime you collect gems, you're gaining points. So there are some cards that just reward you with points. Okay. Some cards give you sabers, and again, you need sabers to take cards off of One-Eye's table. And then lastly, some cards have treasure chests on them, and that's why I was getting to here with the end game scoring. So at the end of the game, we'll evaluate every color of island for majorities. Majorities are determined by how many chests you have on cards that you have acquired from that color of island. So if I had the most chests in the color red, I would get 7 gems or 7 points. Whoever has the second most gets 4 gems or 4 points, and whoever has the third most gets 1 gem or 1 point. And again, we do that for all of the island colors. Once we have awarded those in-game points, we add up the totals, and whoever has the most points wins the game. That's generally how you play Einauge Wachsam.
Good job, Chris.
Okay, so hopefully I made it clear in the rules summary that Einauge is an engine building game. And this is an older one, right? So this is from 2009. This was before I think engine builders really started to take off, when you got games like Splendor, or I think Century Spice Road would be another one that comes to mind. That kind of
feels very splendory.
Yeah, it has that feel to it, right? So it's very much an engine builder. And it's one that tantalizes you with interesting choices, right? So you've got income, which you need to get more cards right. You can go for these majorities. You need the sabers to get cards off the table. It's like giving you a lot of things to think about and the choices that you have on the card for really a pretty simple game, right? Mm-hmm. So how did you feel about those choices, I guess, that the cards offered you and how that related to the engine building? I guess that's probably the best way I can ask that.
It felt like an interesting twist on like the Splendor formula. I mean, I know this game came out well before Splendor did, but I liked the choice that it presents you. The choice between, do I focus on a singular color and try to get that cascade over and over again?
Yeah.
And try to take some of the cards, like the cards that give you, I think there's one of the numbers gives you 2 gems.
Yep.
Right. So if you can get that early and hammer that with multiple cards, you can score a lot of points that way. But that card gives you nothing else. Mm-hmm. And it's the most expensive one.
Right.
So I feel like they did a good job of balancing the cost of the cards versus the rewards and scaling them appropriately. Like the high cost ones give you gems but nothing else. The low cost ones give you more of the barrels, which are the
treasure chest
majority thing, but they cost less. So I felt like that was well balanced, and it gave some interesting decisions to make.
That one card with the 3 treasure chests on it is interesting because it's the cheapest card in the game.
But that's all it's got.
But it doesn't give you anything else. It doesn't give you income. It doesn't give you sabers. It doesn't give you anything. It just gives you a majority, which, again, I thought was kind of a clever thing.
Yeah, because what's interesting is I think we figured out that 5 treasure chests basically locks a color for you. If you have 5 of them, then you've got that color locked down. You have the majority. Nobody can take it from you.
Right.
And 7 points or 7 jewels in this is a lot of points.
Yes.
So I mean, it can sway the game for sure.
For sure.
Yeah, I thought they did a good job with it as well, and it certainly forced you to look at what everybody else is doing at the table, because it's like you're looking at Chris and he's got 3 greens over there. Do I take this green so he can't hit his engine over there, but it's not really going to do me all that much good, or
will it?
Or will it? Maybe
because
later
if
will.
you can come in second place in a color, right?
Right.
That's 4 gems, 4 points, right? It's not a total loss to block somebody.
Right. Yeah. It certainly depends on what it is, but because it's sometimes you can still get a benefit for yourself, and block somebody else. Yeah.
One other thing I wanted to mention, we've kind of been hitting around it, but I just want to reiterate this too, is what Bill and Jason were just saying about the hammering of a single color to get that cascade is so strong. But one thing that I found myself thinking about a lot too was, if you just collect a whole lot of 1 or 2 colors, I don't think you can win this game, because you want to get involved in those in-game scorings, right? And so it's an interesting choice for me to be like, okay, do I take yet another red? I already have the majority. I know I'm going to win that. But I take this red and I fire all 4 of these cards again. I get a ton of stuff, right? But if I don't start thinking about trying to get the majority in another color, or at least getting second in a couple of colors, will that firing of all those cards really help me in the end? Was it really worth it? And so that's kind of like that puzzle you're trying to solve.
Right.
Because when we first played this, we're like, we can't let him have a 6th red.
Right.
And that may be right. But if you have 6 or 7 red cards and maybe 3 gray cards, you're probably not going to win, right? So you kind of do need to be diversified a little bit. And so I found myself kind of thinking hard a lot of times, trying to figure out, should I take another of the same color, or should I try to branch out? So I enjoyed that part of it.
Yeah, I don't think you can win this game if you don't focus on the majorities. But at the same time, there is the tension, because in the end, you might get 1 more majority than other people. Maybe if they're not paying attention, or you really like hone in on it, you could get 2 more majorities than other people. But you're probably going to all come out relatively the same in terms of how many points you're pulling from those majorities. So the points that you get throughout the game matter too. But I don't think you can completely ignore scoring points throughout the game either. So it could be easy to just be like, well, I'm just going to get all the barrels then, right? And if that's the only thing that matters. But I don't think you can do that.
Yeah. Certainly can't ignore it. I will say, too, though, I did enjoy just looking for those opportunities to score points. Let's take red, for example. If Jason has 6 of the 9 red chests locked up, I know he's going to get the 7 points. He's got the majority.
Right.
But if a red card with a 2 chest comes out on it, I can take that one.
Get 4 points.
That's the only one I need to get. I don't need to get another red. I know I have second place locked up, right?
Right.
And so you can kind of snipe those second place points too. I don't know. I guess the point I'm making here, we're getting a little in the weeds, but you're looking at what everybody else is doing quite a bit in this game. At least I was. I felt I was constantly looking at everybody else's tableau.
Right.
And that's a good thing, right? When you're paying attention to what your opponents are doing, that's usually the sign of a good game, right? You're doing something right there.
Yep.
So I have a question. There's a point in the game where you are taking something that is in the tableau of cards and you're putting it on one ice table, which is you purchase with sabers. What's out on the table, you purchase with money. And so there's two different economies running in parallel at the time. So how did you feel about the decision-making of moving and what to choose that was off the tableau and put on the table?
Right.
And then how did you like how that worked with purchasing off of it?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting decision. I don't know that I perfected it by any means,
either.
but it is it's a question of currency, right? I guess it's twofold, right? You're looking at what is something that maybe I can grab if I have the currency to be able to grab it off the table, right? I can pull it off the market, basically, right? And reserve it for myself for later so I can grab it with a saber easily while other people may not be able to. Or you're taking something off the table that is going to be harder for other people to grab. Because generally it's harder to grab the stuff with the sabers, right? Because you have to work up to those and it takes a long time. Money is a little easier to come by. But it could also be the flip side of like, well, Chris has got a ton of sabers over there.
Right.
So I'm deliberately not going to put this card over there because I know if I do, he's going to be able to get it basically for free, right? So yeah, I thought there were some interesting decisions there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I still question if I was grasping all the nuances of this, because every time I played it, I felt like my mind was kind of changing on what was the right thing to do. Because like Jason was saying, you can put a card on one ice table to make it hard for your opponent to get it, but if your opponent is just raking in sabers, then you're not making it hard for him. You're actually making it easier for him, right? Because he has those, right? So maybe it's better to take it off the table. But then on the other hand, is it better to take a card that costs 2 coins and put it on the table, and instead of him paying 2 coins for a card, forcing him to pay 3 sabers for it?
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
You know what I mean?
Right,
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So
So I was taking all the cheap stuff and putting it on the table, so
Right.
you have to pay the expensive sabers for a cheap card.
But see, here's the thing.
yeah.
So let's say I'm hitting purple. I don't disagree with you. This is one thing I was thinking of, and I've got a good saber generation thing going on. If there are 2 purple cards in the display, and you take one of them and put them over on the table,
Then you get two
I
one
could
turn.
get 2 of them in one turn, right?
Right.
Whereas if you left them both in display, I can only take 1, right? So I think all those things have to kind of be going in your mind, right? Of like, what is the best choice here?
Absolutely.
So let's talk about the sabers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe transitioning into cons a little bit. I think
Yeah.
this was like the one thing that maybe we singled out as being, I don't know, maybe not a full con, but something that there was question around. Because obviously, if you have sabers, you're not just getting 1 card every round. You're probably getting 2 cards.
Yeah.
Maybe not every round, but like every other round or something, right?
Yeah.
And cards are everything in this game. So, you know, cards are what cascade. Cards are what give you the majorities and whatnot. So how did you guys feel about that?
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, it. You might call it a con, and you were talking about how well the cards are balanced. And that kind of brought into question in some of our conversations at the post-game discussions about were they balanced well enough, because the sabers are so important. Because if you probably looked at how many cards somebody had in front of them and just didn't count up their jewels and just counted their cards, you can make a good guess that the person with the most cards won. And that's really comes down to the how many sabers did they pick up during the game. So is that a con? Maybe. I mean,
Right.
but because they had to do it, they had to get the sabers. There was some thought that went into getting it. So it's an interesting observation just to think about. Well, it's an interesting thought to look at those two economies and see how they play together. And
It's interesting because you not only have to get the cards that have them on them, but then you also have to cascade on top of them to continue to get more of them.
Sure.
And that's an investment in a way, right? Like we were saying with the sticking to one color versus branching out. So, yeah, I don't know 100% how I feel about it yet.
Yeah, it's interesting. Jason, you weren't in this game, but Bill and I played this with Dan. And, you know, normally on game nights, I don't recommend you do this to your people, but, you know, we warned Dan on the front end. You know, normally in games, when you're teaching it to people, you kind of like give them a heads up on things, be like, okay, you should probably know about this, or heads up for this. And I told Dan, I was like, okay, Bill and I have played this a few times. There's something that we're suspicious about, but we're not going to tell you.
right.
Because what we were worried about, I think we've been accused of, and it's fair, of being hive-minded sometimes.
Absolutely.
Right? And so Bill and I were talking about it, how we feel like sabers are maybe too strong. And I was like, well, you know what? Dan's going to play tonight. Let's not say anything about it. And let's see if he comes at it in a different way. Maybe he'll like beat us doing something different. And like we'll be like, okay, we were wrong about that, right? So we're like, okay, Dan, we have some suspicions. We're not going to tell you. We're just going to let you play. We played it out. We beat him pretty bad.
Right.
Right? And within about 3 turns, he was like, I think I know what it is that you were alluding to now. Right? He even started to pick up on it. Right?
Yeah.
And that didn't help me with my concerns about the sabers. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I just feel like you can't ignore them in this game.
I feel like one of the challenges with the sabers is that if you know the cards, like every color has the same distribution of cards with the same rewards on them. And I forget what number it is. It's either 4 or 5. It's like it has like 2 coins and a saber and chests.
And a chest on it.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's like that is a no-brainer card to pick up.
Right,
like
yeah.
regardless of what color it is, you pick that one up, right? Because you're getting 2 chests towards a 5 chest majority. You're getting a saber and you're getting coin income, right? And it's not an especially costly card, right? It's only 4 or 5. Like I feel like if they had made those cards, like made the sabers more expensive, I don't know
And
how
the
you
gem card's cheaper. We actually talked about this.
yeah.
Right. Or put a saber on a gem card.
Or put a saber on a gem card or something.
yeah.
Or even mixed up the colors or something. I don't know. Maybe like not have all the colors be exactly the same.
Right.
Yep. Are we ready for final thoughts?
I think I'm ready. Bill, start us off.
Okay. Well, to me, this game was fun to play because, I mean, I like the presentation. Of course, I love pirates. Pirates are always fun. The first game I played, I mean, kind of alluding to what we talked about, I did pick up the +2 gem card on my very first round, thinking that, you know, if I cascade on top of that, I mean, that's, 2, 4, 6, 8.
Score points almost every turn. Yeah.
Exactly. But I also think that first play, we weren't quite clued in onto the saber economy, and so people were super sensitive to the fact that I'm not going to let them, get those cards on that color. And so I was not able to score it a lot because just for that reason. However, I do feel like, and this is, I hate to talk about strategy on this, and we're really talking about how good the game is, but I think getting that card early, if I'm cascading to it and not having that saber, probably hurt me for the rest of the game kind of thing, which is really unfortunate.
It feels like your opponents, you'll get out to an early lead,
Right.
and they just reel you in,
Right.
like a fish. You
Exactly.
feel it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. You might hit that +2 2 or 3 times, but yeah, by the end of the game, they will certainly surpass you. I thought it was a fun filler. I mean, the first 3 games I think we played, when we all hadn't figured it out, I think it was kind of fun doing it. But after that, I don't know. I'm going to give it a 3, partly because of the pirate theme. I mean, I'm not sure it totally deserves it, but it's easy to teach, it's fast to play, and I had kind of fun playing it. But I don't think it has great legs, so that's where I'm going to come down to.
Yeah, I will say that I didn't dislike playing the game.
Right.
That it has a fun flow to it, right? You pick up a card, you get some stuff, you get to cascade things. It feels good playing the game. It's just hard when it comes down to, well, I think if I played the game 2 or 3 more times, I would probably do a similar strategy every time.
Right.
And that just means, obviously, like, the game is not going to last very long. So, for me, I was between a 2 and a 3 on this one, in terms of, like, the 2 probably indicating, like, I think there's probably a broken strategy here. I don't know. I didn't, like, fully settle this in my notes before I
You wanted to hear what we had to say, Bill.
No. I think I am going to give it a 2 this time.
Oh, wow.
Despite, like, I like the theme. I like the feel of it. I think it's a fun play for, like, the first 2 or 3 plays if you kind of ignore what we said about strategy. But for a game like this, it's probably pretty difficult to find. And there are just other games that have surpassed it in terms of this engine building mechanic.
Sure, right.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I can recommend it under those conditions.
That's a good point
Makes
that we
sense.
probably don't do enough is, on these older designs. In 2009, when this one came out and there weren't a lot of engine builders, I probably would be much kinder to it, right?
Right.
But there are just so many now that are simple like this one, like Century Spice Road, that just are kind of better, you know? So yeah, that kind of segues good into my thoughts. I think this game is a really good example of why we really value repeated plays. I personally played this one 4 times. And this is why our episodes just come out later sometimes. You know, honestly, like, could we just play every game once and then review it and get them out on time every time we could? But that doesn't really... I feel like that does you all a disservice, because if I had just played this game once, I would have given it a solid 4, right? But the more I played it, the more I began to realize that sabers are just king in this game. I'm convinced of that. For the reason that Bill mentioned in the review, if you just finish this game with more cards, which you're going to finish with more cards if you have a strong saber economy, I can't see a scenario where somebody that finishes the game with 11 cards beats somebody that finishes with 14 cards. I just don't see it. And so I think that once you realize that sabers are super important, you're just going to play that way every time, right? Where you're going to hammer sabers. And then when everybody figures that out, I guess you could say, well, there's that nuance there of once everybody's figured it out. But I don't know. I like a game that gives you multiple paths to victory. This one gives you the illusion of multiple paths with the, like what you were saying, Bill. I'm going to take the 2 gem card early and hit it as many times as I can and score a lot of points, but it just doesn't hold up to sabers. I'm just convinced of that. And so for that reason, I'm going to give it a 3. Like all you said, I enjoyed it when I played it, but I found I was enjoying it less and less as I was beginning to solve it.
Right.
And I feel like we were solving it. And that's why I think it just doesn't hold up, unfortunately.
Right. It's a good-looking game. It was fun. Okay.
All right. Well, those are our thoughts on...
Well.
Oh, yeah. Never mind. I didn't want to have to say it anyway.
Where can we get it, Chris?
Yeah. So there are no copies on Noble Knight. Sorry about that. But there are 10 copies on the BGG Marketplace, interestingly, that are pretty reasonable. So if you'd like to give it a whirl, you can get it on BGG. All right, Jason, go ahead.
No, you do it. I don't know how to pronounce it.
And those are our thoughts on Einauge se Wachsam.
Good job, Chris.
Welcome, wanderer. Asara, the land of 1,000 towers, opens its gates to you. Walk on boldly and you will find yourself in a magical realm where the cities are dominated by palaces and white alabaster walls and towers, topped by gold domes. All over these magnificent cities, cranes reach into the sky at work on various building projects. Wondrous flying machines transporting heavy materials at dizzying heights can be seen from afar. The Caliph's call for a competition to beautify the land has been heard far beyond its borders. And so now you have come to pit your skills against your rival architects.
Good job, Chris.
Assyrian Nights.
Yes. Asara. Published in 2010. It's just like where we live, I feel like. By Ravensburger. At the time of this recording, its BGG ranking is 1,505. Designed again by Kramer and Kiesling. And this game was also recommended to us by BGG user Gabriel Town. So thank you, Gabriel Town,
Awesome.
for the recommendation. All right, brief rule summary for Asara. Asara is a game of clever card play where the players are trying to construct towers of different colors in order to score points. The game board in Asara consists of multiple card placement areas where the players will place cards from their hand of cards in order to perform a certain action, whether that be obtaining a tower section, getting money, building towers, etc. I'll go into all that in detail in a second. But one thing I will emphasize here is that for all intents and purposes, this game really is a worker placement game, right? So every spot on the board has certain locations where you play your cards, and your cards are basically workers. So you're placing them on a spot to do an action in an area on the board, okay? So as mentioned, there is a single deck of cards used in this game, and these cards consist of 5 different colors, 9 cards of each color. And it's important to understand that that's it. There's no text on the cards. There's no symbols on the cards. It's just colors, okay?
Pretty good art.
pretty decent art. There's 5 different colors, 9 cards of each color. Okay, and you'll get a hand of these cards to start every round.
There's like priests or something on the cards. I mean, it's not just like a blank color.
Well, yeah, it's got art on it, but I
Yeah.
mean, it doesn't have like any game.
You make it sound like Candyland. Man.
Yes, it's got some very attractive art on it. Okay, don't interrupt me. On a player's turn, they will play a card or cards from their hand in order to influence a certain action area on the board if there is space available. So again, let me speak to these limitations. So every action spot on the board can only accept a certain number of cards, so that's a limitation. Once the spots are filled up, nobody can go there anymore. And then most importantly, and this is kind of the hook of the game, and this is why the colors matter, not the artwork, but the colors, is that when you go to a spot, so let's say I go to the tower base location to buy a base for a tower, and I'm the first person to go there, I can play any color of card that I want. So let's say I play a blue card. Now later in the round, if myself or Jason or Bill or anybody else decides to go to that same spot, they either have to also play a blue card to go there, or if they don't have a blue card, they can play 2 cards of any color and play them face down on the spot.
This is huge.
This is huge. Okay? So you're not limited in that you can't go there, but if you can't follow suit, so to speak, you're forced to be inefficient.
It's going to cost you.
It's going to cost you. And that's what you have to decide. Is it worth it to me to spend these 2 cards? And you only have a hand of like 8 cards.
Right.
It varies depending on player count, but it matters very much. Okay? So that's important to understand. So once a player has played a card or cards, they will then execute the action associated with their chosen area. So let's go through those quickly. There are the tower section areas. There are 4 of these. You've got your bases, you've got a tower top, and then you've got 2 different areas on the board that will provide you with central sections that you can use to make your tower taller, basically. Okay? It's important to understand that there are 5 different colors of tower, and that each color has a different value associated with it. So, for example, the brown towers are the cheapest. You can get a section from a brown tower for just 3 coins, whereas the white towers are very expensive. It costs like 8 coins. So you may be asking yourself, well, why would I pay more for white as opposed to brown? We'll get to that in just a second. Okay? There's the build tower part of the board. This is where you take your acquired tower components and you build your towers. So this is numbered 1 to 7. So if I play a card on 5, that means I can take 5 tower segments that I've acquired and build them into towers. Every tower has to have a base and a top, and then can have any number of middle segments in between the base and the top. And you'll score a point for every tower section you construct. One thing that's important to understand is that once your tower is constructed, it is not locked ended at that point. You can come back later in a later round and add more middle sections to it to make it taller if you so choose. Why would you do that? I'll get to that in just a second. You can get extra money at some of these locations where you place and you can get more income. Bribery lets you pay coins to look through a face down pile of towers to choose a tile that you would like to take. The first player taking spot. Recruiting buyers. So these next 2 spots are optional, but we did play with them, so I will mention them. You don't have to use these, but we did. Recruit buyers. You can play an unwanted card here to draw 2 new replacement cards. And then the lighted windows. So some of the middle sections have windows printed on them. If you go here, you can open the window, basically. So if you find a tile that matches a tower you built that has a window on it, which basically gives you a point and helps you with tiebreakers at the end of the game. At the end of each round, once all players have played out all of the cards in their hands, the players will score 1 point per constructed tower, 1 point per gold decorated section and window. So I didn't mention this, but some of the tower segments have little gold ornaments on them. If your tower has those gold pieces on them, you'll score additional points for every gold piece on your tower. And then 1 point if you hold the first player marker. That's end of round scoring, and there are 4 rounds in the game. Once the end of round scoring is performed, players take all used cards off the board, the tower areas are refreshed with new tiles, and then each player gets a new hand of cards. After 4 rounds are completed, the game ends, and then the end of game scoring takes place. Now, this is where things will begin to all make sense, okay? Because this is very important. In-game scoring takes into consideration 3 parameters. First, for every color of tower, whoever built the tallest and the second tallest tower of each color will get a certain number of points. Some towers award many more points than others, and this is where that cost comes into play I mentioned earlier. So, for example, the white tower pieces are really expensive, but the reason for that is if you have the tallest white tower, you get a crap ton of points at the end of the game. Okay, whereas the brown towers, which are cheaper, don't award as many points. That's one thing. You'll also score points if you build the tallest and second tallest tower just overall, regardless of color. And then whoever builds the most and the second most number of towers, regardless of height, just number of towers, will also be awarded points. And then at that point, whoever has the most points wins the game. That's generally how you play Asara.
Yeah.
Okay. So starter question for this one. This isn't a completely fair question for Bill.
Oh, yeah?
But I know Jason has played this game, and a lot of our audience has probably played this game too. I did feel like this game reminded me a lot of Alhambra in the way that in Alhambra, these games were actually designed very close together time-wise. I wonder if they influenced each other, but where you're really looking at the colors that people are working on and trying to adjust your strategy accordingly. It's like, okay, he's really hitting this color hard. Should I try to give up on that and kind of go for this color? And this game kind of has that feel to it where, Bill is building a really tall red tower or a really tall white tower. Should I even go there, right? What about tallest overall tower? You're looking at what your opponents are doing, right? So how'd you enjoy that element of this game? Was it tedious? Was it fun? Did you enjoy it? What do you think?
Stressful.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to think about in terms of every card placement you make is not making a card placement in all of the other spots, right? And so you're looking at the board, and I mean, there's only so many colors of tower. So you're looking at the board, and I mean, there's probably going to be out there something that you can work with, like the different sections, right? You can be like, okay, well, I can grab that one, and I can grab that one, and I can make that tower, and I can grab this other one and add to this tower over here. But you're constantly trying to choose which you need to go to first, because it's like, well, if I grab this one first because I really want it and I want to make sure Chris doesn't take it, Bill might drop a color in this other location that I don't have or that I don't have enough of, so I'm not going to be able to play in that area to be able to grab the other piece that I really need. So you're constantly doing that trade-off stuff in your head. I like the fact that you do have to be looking at what other people are doing and making your decisions based off of that, but it's that plus, right? It's that plus you're always trying to like look at the cards in your hand and figure out, maybe I jump on this spot and lock in the color because I have 3 other cards of that color, and I know I can come back later and grab this other piece that I also could use.
Yep.
Right.
So yeah, I thought that was a good. I enjoyed that part of it, although it was stressful.
Yep.
Absolutely. What I found fascinating was the cards that you were dealt. Sometimes, just the random nature of thing, you would have like a long suit, right? You might have 4 blues in your hand.
Yeah. And
so to me, my thoughts were, let me look around the table. Let me see what other people want. I'm guessing they don't have that blue, or they're, mathematically they probably don't have it. So let me put it down in either the bases or the tops or something like that, so that it's going to cost them too. And then let me pull out that tower. And sometimes that informed me about the colors I was using. I thought about that a lot all the way through, is how can I make it painful for everybody else at the table as I was playing.
Yeah, you did do a good job of that. I like that because it's like if you have 4 blues, you can just lead off with blue in like multiple different areas. Like starting off is like, well, I don't need to come back here, but I can use a blue here, and I know everybody else is going to be like
probably
hard pressed to find their blues to go there.
Right,
exactly.
Yeah, there's also a little bit of a game, since we're talking about this card play, which I think is really valuable. A little bit of this game of kind of chicken that goes on. It's like, how long do I wait to play into certain areas? Because there are certain areas where, you play in early. Like the tower sections usually get played into pretty early. But there are 2 spots in particular that I think are worth mentioning, and that's where you get the money.
Oh, absolutely.
And where you build. Right? Because playing in the spot where you build your towers usually comes a little bit later, and you usually want to try to acquire stuff first, right? And so you play a little bit of chicken of like, okay, I'm playing another card from my hand somewhere else. Now I'm decreasing my odds of being able to match if somebody goes there. Am I going to be the one to go there so that I can ensure I can be efficient? But maybe I don't want to go there yet. Maybe I kind of really want to do something else first. Maybe I wait one more round and see if I can do it on my next turn, right? And so you're kind of pushing your luck there. But it hurts so bad when you decide to play somewhere else, and then Bill or somebody plays an orange card on the build spot, and you don't have an orange card, and you're like, oh, now I have to use 2 cards, which, again, using 2 cards too many times is just a killer in this game. And then the money spot, too. Should I go ahead and talk about this? Do you want me to talk about this?
Sure.
I'm talking for a bit. Okay.
Go for it.
The thing about the money spot that I didn't mention in the rules is it gives you 8 coins, 10 coins, 12 coins. But the trick is if you're the first person to go there, you get the 8. And then the second person gets the 10 and the third person gets the 12. And so you don't really want to be the first person to go there. But again, there's that kind of game of chicken where maybe I'm willing to be greedy and I don't want to go there first. And then Bill finally breaks down and does it. But then he plays a card in a color that I don't have. Right?
Or the other people in turn order before you go, and then there's no more spots
and
left.
then take all the spots.
Right.
So, yeah, there's a lot of angsty choices going on there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that decision point on that one. There's 2 spots in there that you feel like you have to hold 2 cards back for. One of them, like you're saying,
Yes.
the build spot and the money spot. And it's like, okay, I have to play
Worst
the
case scenario.
Like worst case scenario that if somebody else does it, then I've got to be able to play those 2 spots because money's tight. And if you don't score that in the first rounds, you're in deep trouble. And same with the building, because I mean you need to score points all along the way. So it's fascinating.
Yeah, going back to what I was saying too about the towers and how it kind of goes back to Alhambra, I'll just reiterate that I really, really enjoy games. We've talked about the card playing angst, but this has the angst of I need to get involved in some scorings. What scoring am I going to do? And if you kind of get in a fight with somebody, I think Jason and I got in a fight for tallest tower in the last time we played it together. And then you just start to just try to decide, dang it, is it even worth it? Do I just let it go and just start working on something else? How hard am I going to fight here? Do I pivot and try to start getting the majority here? Or this color is being kind of ignored. Maybe I'm going to jump in on this. And then you're constantly like watching your back. I found in this game, I was constantly asking, what tile did you just buy? What did you just do? What did you just take? Because I might have the tallest red tower now, but if Jason just took 2 red towers now, I'm like, what are you doing? What are you up to, right? And so I'm trying to like guard my lead, right? And so you're just constantly trying to protect what you think you have while looking for opportunities to take what you might think is available. And I just love stuff like that. I just love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned the open windows. In the last round of the last game we played, I ended up buying 2 open windows and knew that I was either tied or was probably going to be tied by the end of the round, and then played it as my last move. And I just felt like that was just loved the fact that I had the ability to do that and just eke out the winning the ties just from doing that
which is
the
not
board.
trivial.
No, it's not. It just there's so many places in there where you can feel like you can be clever, I guess.
And to reiterate, since Bill mentioned the windows, I didn't cover it super well in the rules, but they give you a point immediately. But let's say Bill and I tie for the tallest white tower, but Bill's tower has a window on it, an open window, and mine doesn't. He wins that tiebreaker and gets the more points, which again can matter in this game for sure.
Yep.
Are we done?
Yeah, I feel like we've touched on the high points.
Yep.
The heights of the towers.
The heights.
What were some of the less good points?
I would say for me, one thing that worried me a little bit in this game, was those pieces that have the gold symbols on them that give you like the bonus points for end of round scoring. Because there are so few of them, there aren't a lot of them. They're just kind of like no-brainer plays, you know what I mean? And I just never enjoy that.
They felt pretty powerful.
They're pretty powerful.
If there's some out on the board, I mean, yeah, you can grab the first player spot, but you don't know what's coming out on the board next round. Right. And so there is a strong first player advantage there in terms of being able to grab one of those early. But if there's multiple, you're obviously not going to get all of them.
Right.
So, yeah, I think I was surprised when we ended the first game that we played how few of them there actually were.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, well, I'm just going to keep trying to get more of those. But they were not coming out. And I was doing search actions through the decks to try to find them, and they weren't in there. And I was like, oh, well, okay.
I wouldn't have done that if I didn't know.
Right.
Yeah.
There's one per piece, right? There's one per
Yeah.
base, one for the middle section, one for top.
For each color, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's funny that you say that because there is that search mechanism out there, and if you want to pay the extra money to bribe and be able to look through the decks, and especially to do that early, I had less of a problem with it. Chris, you used that to really good effect in our games, and I didn't use it at all. And I felt like, if I play it again, I'm going to hit that more often.
Yeah.
But to me, I just didn't feel it was overpowered because you had that ability to do that.
I agree with you. I don't know if it's dominant, but it feels like an obvious move. You know what I mean?
True,
like,
yeah.
if you're looking at all the tower segments out there and one of them has a gold thing on it and none of the other ones do, like,
Yeah.
that's what you're going to do.
Right.
Right? And so I don't know how much it adds to the game, if that makes sense. It was just, I could probably do without it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would say one other thing. I have to mention this because of poor Ken. Our buddy Ken. In a 4-player game on the money spot,
Right.
there are 3 spots. There are actually 4 spots for money. I'll talk about that in a minute. But there are 3 that award the most, the 8, the 10, and the 12. Once somebody breaks down and hits that 8 spot, most of the time, Bill didn't do it in one game because he didn't need to in the last round, but most of the time, once that dam breaks and somebody hits that 8 spot, the next 2 people in turn order take the 10 and the 12. Boom, boom.
Right.
And in a 4-player game, that means that somebody, whoever is to the right of whoever started that, is just going to get left out. Now, you could argue that adds some angst to be like, just don't be that guy, right?
Right.
Take the action earlier, right?
Yep.
But that still doesn't remedy the fact that somebody is going to get shorted. Now, there is a
It's
spot.
also not a 0. It's 5. 'Cause
Right.
You can always go and get 5.
There's a spot on the board where you can play regardless of color of card and always just get 5 coins. So it's not a total wash, but it stings a little bit, right?
Well, let me ask.
So you should know that, I think.
You can hit it twice, right? So, I mean, you
So
could
that's
play
2 cards opposed to 1.
True, but if somebody else plays a different color, you have to play 2
Sure.
cards anyway,
Right.
too. So, it's, yeah. But
Yeah. To me, I think it's a minor con, but I just saw the blood drain out of Ken's face when we were
Right.
playing because it happened to him like 3 times, and I felt bad for him.
Were you the player to his left?
I was.
I'm
So you didn't feel that
not
bad.
shocked.
I mean, I felt a little bad. Yeah, you just need to know that can happen to you. Minor con, I would say.
Oh, too funny. Are we in for final thoughts?
Did you have a con, Jason?
No, I was just trying to remember back because I remember that there was the extra spaces that we played with where you could play there and grab extra cards.
Yeah.
I was surprised you didn't mention that because I felt like you had issue with that spot.
I changed my
didn't have
mind
as
on
much.
it.
I didn't have as much of an issue with that spot.
I think I was just butthurt and salty about it.
Okay, well, we can
Because Bill made a good point. Bill was hammering that spot to good effect, but Bill made a good point. I could just go there, like, is it overpowered? I don't know. I don't think so. But if I think it is, why wasn't I hitting it? Like Bill was. I mean, everything is there's a
Chris.
choice,
That's right. You're hitting the bribe spots and getting all the.
Well, and taking all the gold things, right?
Right, exactly.
So I guess I've changed my mind on that a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can start off with final thoughts.
All right, Jason, go for it.
So I will caveat this one with I only played this game once, just because of all the travel schedule and just the way scheduling worked out. I think you guys got more opportunities to play it than I did. But I enjoyed my play of it. I thought there was good tension. You mentioned the Alhambra comparison.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely applicable here. I enjoyed that tension. I thought the card color worker placement spot mechanic was pretty unique.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
not played anything like that before. And it was enough of a challenge without being frustrating. I mean, of course, it's frustrating when somebody puts a color there and you're like, dang it. Like, I could have gone there last time and I would have had the right color. But
Yeah.
I think that's part of the game, and I think that's a fun part of it. So I enjoyed my play of this game, and I'm going to give it a 4. I think it's a solid 4. I think it could increase over time, potentially, playing it more. Obviously, I only played it once, but I think there's good stuff to chew on in this one. So
Nice. Yeah, for me, I feel like this game, I mean, having come out in 2010, it just feels like a game from that period. And I don't say that as a negative. You know what I mean? Like, it just feels like one of those classic older designs, like an Alhambra. It's just simple and clean. Kind of reminds me of a Knizia in a way, in that, you know how Knizia takes like a really simple mechanism. Literally, you've got a hand of cards with colors on them, and you play the card at the table, and it does a thing. This game was nominated for the Spiel, and you can see why. I mean, it's not complex in your turn, but I feel like there was just a lot to really think about on your turn in regard to where do I go, when do I go here, is it worth it to play 2 cards? And again, going back to that, constantly looking at what other people are doing, and because of that, this game just has a ton of player interaction. You're constantly fighting with each other, trying to pull majorities back and forth from each other, and I just love stuff like that, personally. Just really has a good tension that I'm looking for in a game. So I also think this game is very solid. It's a solid 4. This one could go up for me as well. I went back and forth between a 4 and a 5. I landed on a 4, but it's solidly 4. This is a good quality game. I think if you like older Euro designs with simpler rule sets, this one is definitely worth trying out.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Absolutely. So I'll agree. I mean, I think this is it's a very tight game to me. It's just designed really well all the way through. I loved the idea of having your cards as your worker placement and the colors there, and trying to decide how do I mess up the other people, the players, with my colors, right, as you played them out, because that's truly a thing, and it really stung when somebody else messed you up, and because like you can plan out like your whole hand, kind of, if everything's going to work out okay, and then and it could just go awry in a hurry when somebody plays the wrong card at the right time. But it also feels really good when you feel like you thwarted somebody else.
Yeah.
You feel like sometimes you have bad luck. You have bad luck when you get a bad deal, right? You feel like you don't get the right cards, and in some ways it feels like there never really is a bad deal, because you just can make it work for you.
Yeah, sometimes
right?
you can control it.
It's how you choose to use it.
Exactly. And or you can, like you said, when you get 4 blue ones, sometimes that should feel like it's a really bad one, but if you use it correctly, you can really mess somebody else up, kind of thing, right? But it really also sucks when you have no other color that everybody else is playing,
right?
Because every card you're putting out there is like, okay, this is a 2, this is a 2, this is a 2, this is killing me. With all that said, I mean, I enjoyed the plays. I mean, it was just a fun game all the way through. Just partly because the goals were clear as well. The rules are clear. The spots where you're placing your cards are clear. Like you're saying, you can see what everybody else has in the table. I mean, some games we play here, sometimes I feel there's so many things that are obfuscated, but all of it is visible.
And that's more of a new design thing, right? You know, it's hard to know what somebody's doing because you get caught in all the mess of just all the mechanisms and iconography and symbols. But this one, you can track what people are doing.
Right, like terraforming Mars. Like for me, I can't I just can't follow what everybody's doing, and you kind of need to.
Yes.
So anyway, I like this one. So I also waffled between a 4 and 5. I was leaning heavily towards a 5, and you know what? I'm going to go there. I'm going to give it a 5.
I love it, man. Yeah,
so
do
let's
it.
go.
Dude, I was within a hair
Yeah.
of doing it, and I'm still not sure why I didn't. I think for me it was because it reminded me so much of Alhambra, and Alhambra is like tops for me.
Yeah.
That maybe that's why, but I mean, this game is...
Yeah. Having not played Alhambra,
it's fun. Yeah.
Yeah. That's good.
Cool. Well, where can we find it?
Yeah, where can we get this one? Oh, yes. So, good news. There are copies of this available at Noble Knight. So, Noble Knight Games are our sponsors. We would really appreciate it if you have a desire to try this one out, purchasing it from them. They're for pretty reasonable prices. And if you decide to, our discount code now is SummerGems24. If you enter that code, you'll get 10% off your order. That code is good through October the 10th of this year. So SummerGems24. We'd appreciate it. There are also 18 copies on the BGG Marketplace. And then, interestingly, this game's getting reprinted.
Really?
On GameFound.
With crazy fancy 3D towers,
Yes.
I'm sure.
Yeah. I will say, and this is me just being crotchety and, a grognard probably, but the art looks a little bit garish, honestly. You should look at it. It almost looks like...
Oh, on the new printed comic?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I don't know. It almost looks kind of like... It's hard to explain, like futuristic city type of look to it. Almost like electric. It's weird. I don't like the look of it. I don't think they changed the gameplay, but it is getting reprinted, so if you want to wait for the reprint on GameFound by Avalon Hill, of all people, you could get it there as well.
Cool.
Did you pull it up, Jason?
I did. Yeah, it does look very...
It's weird,
very
right?
futuristic looking.
Yeah, and it's kind of dark, if I remember right. It's kind of like black with like these like
That's funny.
neon-looking colors on it or something. It's
Arabic
weird.
steampunk.
Yeah, exactly.
And there aren't 3D towers, unless it's further down. I haven't scrolled far enough.
Stretch goals, yeah.
All right. Well, those are our thoughts on Asara, Land of 1,000 Towers. Maharaja is a strategic area control game. Don the vestments of the priests of 4 great Indian deities. Travel across the kingdom to build shrines and statues dedicated to them. Secretly plan your strategy and try to overcome your opponents with the help of characters and their abilities. Each round, the Maharaja, great king of India, visits a new city and rewards players according to their god's worship value in that city. I think I'm going to stop there because the rest is just like the news. And that was like the new version. So, Maharaja. There are 2 versions of this game.
Indeed.
There's a 2004 version and the 2021 version. Mm-hmm. The 2004 version, published by Phalanx Games. 2021 by Cranio Creations. Both obviously designed by Michael Kiesling and Wolfgang Kramer. The old edition is currently ranked 997, so just under that 1,000 limit. Whereas the 2021 version is 4,414. 4,414.
Wow.
So I am going to be doing the rules for the original 2004 version of the game.
Okay.
But at the end, I will talk about the differences, and some of them are pretty significant between this and the newer 2021 version.
Definitely.
And then we played both, so we will be talking about both
Yep.
throughout the review, and we'll try to keep it clear which one we're talking about. When. So the objective of Maharaja is for players to build all of their palaces before any other player has managed to do the same. Also, caveat here, the 2 different versions of the games call all the things, all the components, different stuff.
Yeah.
So when I was reading the flavor text, it was talking about statues and shrines and priests and stuff. In the original version, they're palaces and houses and architects. So
Right.
I'm going to be referring to the original components. We will try to keep those straight, again, also in the review. But just know that the components are slightly different. But the objective is to build all of your palaces or statues in the new version before any other player has managed to do the same. The problem being that palaces are very expensive, so players will need to impress the Maharaja along the way in order to secure enough funds to continue building. The board is made up of a network of 7 different cities connected by a web of roads. Mm-hmm. Each city contains 7 palace building sites, 1 central site ringed by 6 other secondary sites, and each city also contains an unbounded space for any number of houses to be built. And I'll talk more about houses and what they're for in a second. Along each road is 1 or 2 village locations, each of which has space for 2 houses to be built. And then finally, the board contains a round tracker along which are randomly ordered governor tiles. There are 7 of these. Each corresponds to one of the 7 cities on the board. And this track will determine which city the Maharaja is going to visit at the end of the following round. Each player begins the game with 7 palace tokens and a few houses of their color, and players will have a pool of a whole bunch of other houses that they can pull into their supply, but they don't have access to them at the start. Before starting the game, players will seed the board with a bunch of houses just to get things started, and then they will choose a character card. There are 7 of these, each of which is numbered 1 through 7, and each of which provides a special ability to the player while they're holding it. So the numbers on the cards are important because that determines turn order. I'm not going to go through each of the abilities that are on these cards, but we'll talk about them as we go. Players place their architect in the starting location on the map, and then we go through a series of rounds. Each round plays out the same way. First, the Maharaja will move to the next city in the order of the governors, and then the governor at the front of the line is moved to the back of the line. Continue to kind of move through this stack of governors. Then players will select actions. So each player has an action dial with 9 different actions on it, and it has 2 different clock hands or pointers. They will use those to select 2 of the actions. You can choose the same action twice if you want, that they will perform on their turn. The selection is done simultaneously. Each player chooses their actions, flips their disc over, and then once that's done, the third phase, players will, in turn order, based on their character cards, each execute all of their actions, and then we'll move on to the next player until everyone has had a chance to play. So what are these actions? There are 9 of them. I'm going to go through them real fast because they're all pretty simple. But basically, one allows you to take 2 coins. Coins are used to build houses and palaces. I'll come back to that. The second action allows you to build a house in either a village or a city. Houses always cost 1 coin, whether they're in a village or a city. Remember, the villages are along the roads. The cities are the big areas where you're building palaces. In order to build in a city, a player's architect must be in that city. But villages can be built from anywhere. It doesn't matter where your architect is. The third action, you can just build 2 houses, one of which has to be in a city. Fourth action, you can move a house, but it has to be your own. Relocate it from any location to another location on the board. The fifth action, you can pull 2 more of your houses from your pool or your supply into your available set of houses. 6, you can build a palace. This always costs 12 coins, which is a lot in this game. And this is kind of where the trick comes in because you have to be making money in order to be able to afford to do this. And palaces, again, have to be where your architect is currently located. Action 7, you can build a palace and a house. Action 8, you can change the order of the governors. This is important. So you can shift around the order of where the Maharaja is going to go next. And that
Chaos.
That can cause a lot of heartache. And then the 9th action is that you can swap your character card. So you can swap for one of the ones that's still available in the bank, or you can steal a character card from another player.
That can also create a lot of heartache.
I can too.
It can. More on that later.
Weeping and gnashing of teeth.
Yeah, or throwing of components. Yeah. So I mentioned that your architect needs to be in a city in order for you to build there. I should explain the purpose of the roads and building all these houses, right? So you can freely move your architect anywhere you want on your turn at any time. However, you have to be able to pay for it. And the way that that works is that if you have a house in a given village, that village is free. You don't have to pay anything, regardless of who else is built there. However, if you do not have a house in a village, you have to pay everybody who does have a house there. Yeah, and it's 1 coin for each of the houses. So again, you can move freely, however much you want, in between actions, in the middle of an action, doesn't matter. But you have to be able to pay for it. After all that's done, after every player has played out their 2 actions, then we go on to the 4th phase, which is when we score the city where the Maharaja currently is located. And the way this works is the players are going to tally up their points in an area where the central palace is worth 3 points. Outer palaces are worth 1.
A piddly 1.
Houses in a city are worth 1. And then having your architect present in that city is also worth 1. Then, based on the points, players will be awarded differing amounts of coins. So, again, this is how you get more money in the game. And you need money because you're trying to build palaces before other people do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much it. The game ends either when a player builds their 7th palace or at the end of 10 rounds. So, real quick, before we start talking about things, I'm just going to explain some of the differences in the 2021 version of the game because they are significant.
Significant.
So, in the 2021 version, the game is less of a race and more a game of points.
Yes.
In that you have actual victory points. And the game still ends if a player runs out of their palaces, which are called statues in this version. But the winner is points-based. And there are other avenues for scoring points. There's a lot of like coin to points conversion mechanics going on, including like one of the actions on your dial is like pay 2 coins or pay 3 coins.
3 coins for 2 points.
3 coins for 2 points, yeah. But there are other ways to do that as well.
Yeah.
There are also randomized character cards, so there are 16 different character cards instead of the 7, and you play with a random set each game that can change things up. There are reward tiles in addition to scoring money at the end of each round where the Maharaja is. You also have a choice of a set of reward tiles that give you additional things like more ability to convert coins to points, or just take some coins, or just take some points. There are also some of the outer palaces have reward spaces on them, which means if you take the outer spaces, you get some additional bonuses, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The first 2 people who get there get that.
Yeah, and then the way the final scoring works is that it still heavily emphasizes getting your palaces out first.
Definitely.
Because each palace that you have out is worth 3 points, which is significant.
Yes.
And then you score points for leftover coins.
And 2 points for every majority you have.
Yeah, and there's area majority at the end.
Which city, you need palaces to have majorities.
Right. Each city, you tally up your points like you would if the Maharaja was there, and you score points based on area majority.
Yeah. That's very important, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So some significant differences there.
Yeah.
We will parse that out as we talk.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess that's a good spot to start, right? The central mechanic, obviously, of moving around the roads, having to build out the paths through the roads. I guess I should mention one last thing about the roads is if there's not at least one house in each village along a path, it is impassable.
Right.
So that's the other caveat there. But as we talk about that, I mean, the core mechanics: get your palaces out, navigate the roads, mess with the character cards. All that stuff is kind of the same. But how did you guys feel about this race to trying to get all these palaces out and having to balance that with your income?
I thought it was a fascinating challenge to manage the road system, because you really have to almost think about the whole game in some ways. But certainly the first 2 places you're going to build palaces, you're given 4 houses you're going to place out to move around. And so we're all kind of vying to make sure we get to the first 2 or 3 places for sure, because you know where the Maharaja is going to go the first time. And that's going to be a place to score. And money is super, super tight. And so,
especially in the first edition.
Yes, especially in the first edition. And so, it's almost like, okay, we're all going to be fighting like cats and dogs for that first one. I mean, do I skip that one and go to the second one and just let everybody else have it and make sure I get the second one?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's just an interesting challenge on how you manage it, because it is also more expensive if your Maharaja is already there to build it. If you build ahead of the Maharaja when he's not there, it's like 2 coins cheaper.
Well,
in the second edition.
Oh, it's
in
not.
First edition, it doesn't matter where the Maharaja is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
No, that's a great point, Bill. So as you've alluded to, and what Jason was alluding to, in the first edition, I did feel like, in my experience with the first edition, people were kind of dogpiling on the city that the Maharaja was in, because the game in the first edition just does not afford you a lot of good ways to get coins, right? And one other really important change that I don't think you mentioned, Jason, is that at least in a 4-player game, when the coins are awarded, when you score a city where the Maharaja is, first through 4th place, it's 12 coins, 9 coins, 6 coins, 3 coins. Yeah. In the second edition, it's 12, 10, 8, 6. So the disparity becomes much less. So why that matters is that if you find yourself in the short end of the stick on a couple of early scorings, you're going to be so behind economically that it's just going to be really hard for you to recover.
Right.
And so you'll find that people are desperately dogpiling on the spots that are scoring, because if you fall behind economically, I feel like it's kind of like a rich get richer, poor get poorer thing. And you could say, well, you can move where the governor's going to be and change that, but if you scored 3 coins in the current scoring and the person that scored 12, they're just going to run to where you moved it to and start building a lot of stuff because they got a ton of money and you don't, right? And so you really, I don't know. I really liked how the second edition changed things and that the coin disparity was much less.
Yeah, and even if you don't have a presence in the second edition, you still get 3 coins.
Or 6 coins, you mean?
No, 6 coins is 4th place, but if you have nothing there,
you get 3, right?
You get 3, I think, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe it's you have to have something, but there's still a last place or something. I don't know.
Well, no, if you have at least one house there, you can get 6,
right,
as opposed to 12, right? And so That, in addition to placing a palace in a place where the Maharaja is not, is 2 coins cheaper, right? Plus, in the new edition, there are actions on your wheel where you can build for cheaper, 1 coin cheaper. All of these things matter because I feel like it allows for you to make strategic strikes on cities that are upcoming much more realistic and viable and easy, as opposed in the first edition, where it's hard for you to jump ahead because if you fall behind economically, I think you're just kind of out of it. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Yeah, the first edition also heavily emphasizes the central spaces in each city.
An absolute no-brainer.
And so you could say, well, maybe you abandon one city and you just jump ahead and you grab that center spot because it's so valuable, right? But I feel like the cost to doing that is so high. And then you could jump out there and somebody could screw up the order of the governors, and then you're like doubly screwed, right? I appreciate the tightness of the first edition and what they're trying to accomplish, but I think I agree in that the second edition just felt like it opened up the strategic space.
Totally agree.
Of the game, which is rare because I feel like most of the time when games try to do this, like they try to release a game and modify all the rules and add in all kinds of additional stuff, it detracts from the game.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm jumping ahead too far here.
No.
Like, I feel like second edition opened things up in a way that made the game more engaging. And I know that's going to be a controversial opinion.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah.
I felt like I was thinking about future cities much more in the second edition than in the first edition when everybody's focus was on the city at hand, right? Not to mention, I'm glad you mentioned the center spot in the first edition being a no-brainer, because it is. 3 points of influence versus 1 for every other spot. It's just huge, right? You want to be there. In the second edition, making the peripheral spots worth 2 with the addition, and normally I hate stuff like this in newer editions of games, but making some of those spots giving you a benefit really introduced a good, hard decision of, do I just go ahead and take the center spot for the 3 points of influence, or do I take this 2 value spot and then I get some stuff?
Well, there were several times when I went to the 2 value spot and the 3 spot was open.
It makes it viable, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like we're talking about why is the second version better?
I might be.
but one of the things I also liked about the second version is because it was cheaper to play ahead of the Maharaja, that switching the governors seemed to, I don't know, have a bigger impact
for sure,
as far as me choosing or somebody else choosing it or something like that. Because I don't know, that's what everybody was trying to do, was get ahead of it because money's so tight.
Yes.
And because you have so few actions, you only get 2 per turn, they really have to be impactful for you. And so as you're looking at your dial and saying, am I going to do this one? Am I going to do this one? You really are looking to make sure that what I do is going to really work out for me well.
Yep.
If you're doing something like switch the governor, you're giving up a lot because you're not
you may not something else.
Yeah. Because I mean, generally the other stuff is giving you money or putting stuff out on the board or something like that. You're with swerving him is really kind of screwing somebody else over, maybe getting to you, but it is also sacrificing something for you on that particular turn.
Yeah,
for sure. Let's talk about these character cards.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like that's important in both editions.
Yes.
I feel like I have thoughts on both editions. So, as I mentioned, the character cards have numbers on them. In the first edition, it's 1 through 7. In the second, it's 1 through 16, but you're playing with a random set of, I think it's player count plus something.
Plus 3, I think.
Yeah. And they have special abilities in addition to determining turn order, turn order is huge.
Huge.
To be able to jump on certain spaces. But these abilities are strong. Like, for instance, one of them lets you travel for free. Right?
Yeah.
You're still paying out. The bank is paying out.
Right.
To people,
You're not paying, right? Yeah.
But you're not paying, and that can be huge.
Oh, my, yeah.
One gives you, like, a huge discount on the cost of palaces. I'm trying to think what the other ones are.
Other ones you could just put the houses out for free, one house out for free.
Yeah.
All kinds of crazy good stuff.
Right. Yeah. What did you guys think of these?
Loved it. This was one of my favorite parts of the game. I love that balance of do I take a lower tile that has a not nearly as good ability, but get first dibs, right? I can place in cities first that matter to me. And I don't know if you mentioned this as well, Jason, but it's a tiebreaker, right? So if you tie with somebody else in influence in a city and you have the lower, less powerful character card, you win the tiebreaker, which ties are not uncommon in this game. But the flip side of that is the higher value tiles have freaking awesome abilities on them.
Right.
And you kind of get to see what everybody else in front of you has done, right? Which has some value, right? Like, I know what I have to beat now. Can I beat it? Or should I just try and go do something else, right? And so just like balancing those decisions, to me, this is true of both versions. There's more variety in the second edition, but that interplay is the same between the two of them, and I really liked that a lot.
Yeah, I think the fascinating thing about it, too, is that the stronger abilities have higher numbers, which means you go later in turn order. There's a higher risk that card is going to get taken from you before you even had a chance to use it, right? Which is a good, I think it's a good trade-off, right? Yeah. You can take a lower powered ability, but an earlier number, and ensure that you have access to that ability. If you take that super powerful action, you're going to go last and have that advantage, but there's a good chance that somebody might steal that card from you if they do the character swap action before you even have a chance to take advantage of it. I think that's a good trade-off.
And one of the rules there is you get to use the power of the card that you have and use the power of the card that you take, which is kind of cool. It ends up being tough because I know like in the new version, the number 16 card allows you to build a palace for 3 coins less, which is like freaking huge. I mean, Jason used that at the end in our last game to good effect, but it's because he got 2 out, I think, with that.
Yeah, I love that they're not safe because after a couple rounds, you can kind of I do. I do.
Chris was pretty mad about it the first time.
No. Well, let me explain that. So I don't like it in the first
when Bill
round.
Does it.
In the setup where
it's still the same choice, though. I mean, you're still having to choose. Do I take the? Although I do agree with you, they could have made it so that like you can't use the character steal option in the first round.
And that's how I house rule it. I think that should be a rule. I think after that, all bets are off, and I'm totally fine with it. Somebody steals it any other round, I think that's totally fair and valid. In the first round, if you're choosing to go later with your initial placements of houses and stuff, you shouldn't get. The whole reason you chose to go later was to use this thing that now gets taken from you. That was a terrible rule. But anyways. With the caveat of that house rule, I love that in like, if you have a character tile for like a couple of rounds, you just kind of get used to having it, and you start to like take it for granted. I have to use this example, Bill, because it was so funny.
Oh, was it funny?
It was funny for me because Bill had the one where he was moving around for free, and he had it for like 3 rounds in a row. None of us had taken it, and I found myself in a position where I needed it. And Bill had built no road network because he was just zipping all around the board. And I grabbed it, and he got stranded down in a corner of the board.
It was hysterical.
It wasn't to be mean. I'm saying it to make a point because that can happen to any of us, right? You can't count on having it because you might not. You need to always, every turn, be asking yourself, what will I do if somebody takes this from me, right? Do I have a plan, right? And I think that's a good thing. Sorry to make jokes at your expense, Bill.
Are you really, though?
I am. I really am.
Yeah, I totally agree on the character cards. I will say one con that I noticed in my play of the new edition is that with the randomized draw of characters, the draw of characters that we had just was not engaging. There were like 3 out of the 7 or something like that characters that just nobody was interested in the whole game because their abilities weren't that great. And then there was one of them that I think should just be removed entirely, which was that every time you score any number of points, you get an extra point.
A victory point.
I mean, Cameron just sat on that for a long time and just racked up. I mean, he had like 25 points by the time we even started final scoring, right? Now, you could say, well, don't be an idiot. Don't let him sit on that card, right? And sure, yeah, totally makes sense, right? But I don't know. Because, I mean, eventually Dan clued into that, and he took it from him. But then they were just trading it back and forth. And it's like, well, it's inefficient to take the card from him. I don't know. That card just, I didn't particularly like that one. And I think you run the risk of having kind of like a bad setup of cards depending on how it works out. Yeah. And then you could always house rule it. We're just going to play with this set because that's what we like. I think
Gerald won with that, right?
No, he had a different one.
Did he? Okay.
Yeah, he had the one that just let you kind of put a house out at the start of your turn, like a free house.
Mm-hmm. I like that they added in more options. I think that's good, but you just got to be aware of some of them. Anytime they do that, you question, is it fully balanced in all scenarios, right?
Well, that's a good segue. I'm going to ask you guys a question because I can hear Ghidorah in my head right now. So Ghidorah, our good friend, this is his number one favorite game. He loves first edition. He hates second edition. And we had
he's played it.
Oh yeah. So we had a long spirited discussion on Discord about why first or second edition is better. Mm-hmm. And he said one of the problems that he had with second edition was that first edition really felt like a race. Mm-hmm. To get your palaces out, where the second edition, he said he felt like the point scoring kind of took that race element away, and it just became all about points, even at the expense of worrying about Maharaja scoring. So basically, it was like, you don't need to worry about majorities in the Maharaja. You don't need to necessarily even worry about palaces. It's just like whenever you can score points, whether it be a reward or jumping on a spot or maybe taking that character tile you mentioned, just the heck with majorities, just score points wherever, and you can win that way. I never tested that because it didn't feel like it was in the spirit of the game, and I don't know if I think that's viable. But it does feel like you can't ignore points completely, right? And so how did you feel about that, like how that kind of played out?
Well, I want to say that the people who paid attention to in-game scoring versus in-game scoring were the ones who won the game. So I believe there's probably some truth to that in the games that I played.
Well, in the games that I played, where that was true, it was because we were neglecting in-game scoring completely. Like I'm thinking of during the game.
Not
in. Yeah, I'm thinking of the game with Gerald.
Right.
Gerald was scoring a lot of points during the game, but that's because you and I haven't played the first edition. Mm-hmm. We're valuing the majorities a lot more.
Right.
And we just weren't scoring points. And I feel like, again, I haven't tested this, but I feel like as long as you're scoring some points along the way, which we weren't,
right,
that the end game, END game's point scoring will be enough to overcome it. Because, again, you get 3 points per palace, and you get 2 points for every city you control, right? I think we were just doing a bad job. We were trying to play second edition like first edition.
Right.
And I think that's the issue a lot of people have with it. Is second edition and first edition, they're just different games.
Well, right? I think, like Dan in our game, he spent an entire round one time and didn't do anything on the board. He just used point conversion stuff for a round. But by the end of the game, he had 4 statues left unbuilt.
Right.
And I think that was an oversight on his part.
Did he win?
He had forgotten. No.
Okay.
Did not win.
All right. If he had one, then that would be a problem.
Did he get second? No, he was in last place, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was pretty far down.
Okay.
Cameron did win, but he won because he hammered that character card that I mentioned.
Just take
and
that
it's
out
mainly
of the game.
because we ignored it. We were like, it's not going to be that big of a deal. And it was a huge deal. So I guess what I'm saying is you can do that strategy where you're like, well, I'm just not going to focus on what's going on the board. I'm just going to convert coins into points the whole time. But it's costly. It's costly to convert coins into points. And I don't think you could exclusively do that and just win the game.
Well, see, that's what Ghidorah said. He said he played with a guy that just did that and won that way. But I would counter that by questioning him, did he play like Bill and I were playing, where we were just totally ignoring during game scoring? I feel like if you're at least doing it some and then focusing on majorities, I don't feel like somebody will beat you just hammering scoring on spots. But
yeah, I mean, if you get all your palaces out, that's 21 points, 24 points, something like that, plus all the area majorities.
Right.
Like, if you're not focused on that, you're not going to get any of those. And that's 2 points per city.
Not to mention, if you win the majority in a city in second edition, you get first choice of the rewards, right? Which could be points there, right? See, that's what Bill and I weren't doing. We just weren't taking the points because we were like, we need more money for. We were playing second edition like first edition.
Yeah,
and we weren't adjusting. Yeah, you
have to find the balance. It's kind of like Einauge. You can't focus only on the majorities at the end. But you can't focus only on the diamond scoring either.
Right.
I mean, that is such a dilemma because, I mean, sometimes if you're going to pay like 3 coins to get 3 points or whatever, which is
3 to 2.
3 to 2, which is huge. I mean, that feels like a pretty good ratio. That 3 points might be the difference between you putting out a palace or not on your next turn.
Yeah.
I don't know. It feels like, okay, is it really worth that end game for that? It probably is, because area control, you only get 2 points, right?
Yeah.
That 3 points, that $3 for 2 points from now is the same. So it's, I don't know, because you may or may not get the area control because everybody's fighting for it.
I really wish I could have played it one more time just to be that douche and try to like do that strategy, that just doesn't feel like it's in the spirit of the game, and I wasn't able to test it, but I don't know. I'm going to go with my feeling, but I could be wrong, I guess.
Yeah. I won't rule out what he's saying at this point, but yeah, it's an interesting thought, I guess.
Right, sure.
All right. Well, I feel like we've explored both editions at this point.
Yeah.
Move on to final scoring. I feel like we should, I don't know, y'all may disagree, but I feel like we should score both editions.
I agree.
Independently.
Yep. I agree. All right, I guess I'm starting, huh?
Yeah, man.
Oh, boy. Reprints are such a weird thing, man. Especially when they start changing things, right? And I feel like such a hypocrite. I'm just going to go ahead and say I haven't played Skyrise yet, which is the reprint of Metropolis.
Yeah, talk about overproduced.
And I already feel my internal bias just wanting to poo-poo all over Skyrise, right? Because it's doing the thing that kind of Maharaja did here. It's adding stuff, adding new elements to a game that I personally already love as is. I think Metropolis is great, and I don't want them mucking it up because I think it's good. The difference between Metropolis and Maharaja is I had never played Maharaja before I played the second edition. So I feel like I was able to come at it, a little bit more unbiased, right? And say, okay, I'm going to play the first and play the second. Which one do I think is better? I think second is way better. Way better. Could there be some issues with in-game scoring with the points? Possibly. My gut tells me there's not if you play it enough times. But to me, the choices that the second edition presents to you are just far more compelling and interesting. In the first position, we were falling all over each other to get in the center spot because that's all that matters, and we were dogpiling where the Maharaja is because we were desperate for money. I just didn't find that to be interesting. Whereas the second edition fixed all of that. The center spot is now not a gimme at all. The peripheral spots with the bonuses are viable, and oftentimes I found myself choosing them over the center spot. That's a good change. The discounts and the coin disparity between scorings allows for you to branch out and attack different cities that are coming up much more easily in the second edition than the first edition. That's a huge, much better improvement, in my opinion. I could go on. I won't, because I don't want it to go too long. I'm just saying that, in my opinion, from a person who, and this is the key, I think, doesn't have a strong emotional attachment to the first game, and have played it many times and have loved it over the years, and now I'm like, what is this thing that's changing this thing that I love? Coming at it from somebody playing both at the same time, I think second is just way better. Honestly, like way better. So for me, I'm giving second edition a 5 because I think it's so fun. I think it's a great game. First edition, had I not known second edition existed, I might give it a 3. It just wasn't that fun. I'm actually probably going to give it a 2 because I think the second edition is so much better, and only an idiot would like the first edition.
All right, Ghidorah. I can't wait to see your response.
I think the second edition is just trivialized the first one. So why is the first one so much higher rated? Nostalgia, I think.
You're going to make us lose an honorary Hidden Gems team member.
I know. This is coming across a little hard. I get it. I'm glad you like first edition, man, or everybody else that does. But I do think that people that don't have the experience of the first one coming at it with no prior experiences, I think you're going to like the second one better because I think it just fixes a lot of the problems the first one had. my opinion. So I'm going to go 2-5 just to be extra spicy.
Right, you are.
Got that spicy ginger beer over there.
That's right.
Yeah. I'm not sure how to follow that. I will say that I've only played the first one once. Played it with Chris. Chris got way out ahead and was
Runaway leader. I mean, he was able to hit the threes, and it was just I felt like I had no strategy to come back and catch him. Now, I don't know if there was if I played it more, if something might appear for me to be able to do it, but at this point, it doesn't feel like I could have. So I don't know. There was some level of frustration for that. One, that Chris won. But the other part, it's the worst. So, but the fact that the center position was worth 3 and the other ones were worth 1. Yeah. I mean, it was, I don't know. It kind of reduced the decision space, I guess. Totally.
So, with the new one, I was able to play that more times. I was able to see more strategies get implemented. I feel like, how do I say this? With the new one, I enjoyed it, but I'm not sure that it's in my wheelhouse for games that I like. I'm going to give the new one a 4 and the old one a 3, just because, I don't know. I'm going to...
You're a nicer guy.
I guess so. Well, we're going to try to hit all the numbers now. If Jason gives a 1 and a 6, then we've got them all.
Do it.
The pressure's on now.
Oh, yeah. No. Okay. Wow. All right. So I agree with both of y'all. I like second edition better than first edition, for sure. I can see the merits of first edition. I think that if you were to play that game a lot, you would start to find there are a lot of like really devious strategies that you could pull out. I think somebody even called this out on the discussion, like moving a house, right, which doesn't exist in second edition, and strand somebody in a corner or something. I think there is strategic decisions to be made. I don't think it's a bad game necessarily. It's just a different game.
Yeah.
It's a very different game. It's much more about taking that risk of like, maybe I jump 2 cities ahead and grab the 3 spot and see if that like works out for me in the end. And it's all about the timing of when do I jump on what and how do I balance that with still trying to be in the running on the city where the Maharaja is going to be. I think there is strategy there, and I think there is merit to that game. I don't know if I find that game fun, though. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem that I had with it. Not so much that I think it's a bad game. I think that I struggled to enjoy that version of the game. Whereas in the second, it felt like all the things that we've already said, right? The decision space opened up. There were more choices to be made. There were more angles of attack, it felt like, that weren't just devious strategies of like, haha, look, I suck it, I got you, right? And maybe that's taking the teeth off of it. You could make that argument of like it's taking the edge off. And I know that we harp on that a lot on this show of like, oh, well, they changed the rules and it just takes all the teeth out of the game. It's not as masochistic anymore. For whatever reason, with this particular game, it felt like the addition of those rules did not take away from the game. Maybe they take the teeth off a little bit, but it felt like for this particular game, that opened up the fun a little bit more. Yeah. It made it more engaging and more fun to play, and it felt like it made it a little bit more accessible to people who maybe are not all about that like deeper, meaner, to be honest, strategy portion of it. So I see merit in both sides. Mm-hmm. For me personally, playing both, I think I enjoyed the broader decision space of second edition. Mm-hmm. And so I'm between like a 4 and a 5 on that one.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to settle on a 5 for second edition. I'm going to give first edition a 3. I'm not going to go to 2 because I don't think it's a bad game. I think it has a lot of merit and is a good game in its own right. It's just not the version of it that I want to play if given the choice. And so, unfortunately, for some of our listeners, like I
know.
I think that's where I land on it.
To be fair, Ken played this too, both editions, and he also preferred second edition. Mm-hmm. Everybody that I know of who played both preferred the second. Now, having said that, none of them had a history with the first, but that was just true of our group.
Right, but Jason, I do appreciate the fact that you brought up that this first edition probably has a strategy space that we didn't really get to explore by playing it.
It's definitely there. I mean, even what we did explore, there is strategy there.
Yeah.
It just feels harsh and feels really strict. Like you have to be in the running for those Maharaja spaces. It's just so tight. And
super tight.
In most games, that is what we're looking for. Like we want that. We want that like agonizing decision space tightness. But it felt, I don't know. There was just something about this one that the opening up, the broadening of the decision space felt like it made it a better game.
What does BGG say as far as the best player count for the first edition? Do you anybody know?
Well, first edition goes up to 5.
It does indeed.
It does, but I mean, we played with 4, and it was knives out for that. So I mean, I wonder if like it was better at 3 or something, so that it's not. I don't know.
I think it says 4 or 5, but I'm not sure.
Yeah,
You're asking for the old one or the new one?
the old one.
The old one. So the old one, it says it is best at 4 to 5. And actually 5 has the most votes.
Isn't that interesting?
66%.
Boy, I mean, that's now nuclear bombs out.
Right. That would seem even worse to me because I feel like, what is the 5th place player getting 1 coin at that point? I mean, you're screwed.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You're playing a long time without being able to get in the game.
Yeah. I just, again, to me, the biggest problem I felt like I was seeing was you're just going to have a runaway leader or leaders, right? I just don't see any avenues to come back from a bad start in the first edition.
One final point that I'll throw out about second edition is I liked that it gave you the area majority at the end, gave you a reason to go back to cities
Yes.
that were passed by already. You could say, okay, well, yeah, manipulate the governor track and
as
like
they come back around.
get it to score again for yourself, and that's, I guess, a strategy. But like I liked that I was thinking about the older cities, right? In the first edition, it was like, okay, well, that's scored. That's never going to happen again, or maybe it will, but if it does, it's going to get telegraphed because somebody's going to move a governor. So I don't need to pay attention to that at all anymore, right? Whereas in the other one, it was like, okay, well, I need to be thinking about how am I going to get another house over there so I can edge out the majority and get that extra bonus. It just added more things to think about.
Totally agree. Good points.
All right. Well, all that said,
Where can we get it, Chris?
Yeah.
All right. So I've got good news on this one. So both editions of this are available on Noble Night. So you can get it there at Noble Night. And again, our discount code is, what is it?
Summer Gems.
Summer Gems 24. Let me just double check that.
While he looks that up, I will say that if you are a like first edition maven and like deeply enjoy it, join our Discord and share why. Like we would love to know. I would love to know more strategic stuff about first edition and understand why you guys love it.
That's right. Back up Ghidorah.
Yeah, Ghidorah, I can't wait for this episode to drop. He's just going to absolutely lose it on me on Discord, and I welcome it. Yes, our discount code is SummerGems24. And then there are also 52 copies of first edition and 34 copies of second edition on the BGG Marketplace.
Wow.
No problem getting this game if you want to try it out.
Cool. And that's our thought. And we'll try that again. And those are our thoughts on Maharaja.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us for this episode of Hidden Gems. If you like what we're doing here, please remember it's a huge help to us if you'd leave a rating or review on your podcast platform of choice and or follow us on our various social media platforms. Those simple things can make a big difference for the show's exposure so that more folks can enjoy exploring games with us. Check out the BGG Guild if you want to interact with us or share a game that you feel is a hidden gem. And if you're so inclined, please consider supporting the show over at patreon.com/hiddengemspodcast, where you can access and listen to all of our backstage extra content. Until next time, I'm your host, Jason.
It's Chris.
And this is Bill.
Thanks for listening.
This episode of Hidden Gems, number 65, was recorded in Raleigh, North Carolina on July 22nd, 2024. It's been way too long since we've had some Cameron in our lives on the podcast. If you missed hearing from Cameron as much as we have, be sure to tune in next episode as he joins us in our Spiel des Jahres series 2011 edition. Will the 2011 winner Quirkle continue the trend of receiving high marks from the reviewers? Tune in to find out. Hidden Gems is produced and edited by Chris Alley, Cameron Lockey, and Jason Yanchuleff. Board Game Geek Guild is monitored and managed by honorary Hidden Gems team member Ghidorah. Our Discord channel is monitored and managed by honorary Hidden Gems team member Snoozefest. Our show's logo was illustrated by designer and artist Caitlin Nieto. Check out her work on Instagram at It's Caitlin Nieto. We would love to hear from you. Feel free to join the discussion on our many social media accounts. You can find us on Facebook at Hidden Gems Board Game Podcast, Instagram at hiddengems.podcast, and X at Hidden Gems Board. Disagree with one of our reviews? Have something you want to say about the games we discussed today? You can also make your voice heard on our Board Game Geek Guild at boardgamegeek.com, guild number 3874. Once again, thank you for joining us on Hidden Gems, and until next time, fellow gem seekers, enjoy your games and enjoy your search.